And
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
we do have a pretty full agenda, so we'll try to stay on track if we can. We'll do the best we can. You see. Set agenda, I would like to propose moving Brian McKenna's presentation from 11A to 9, what would be 9E. And that would let Brian out of here sooner. Are we all, is that okay? We all in agreement for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll do roll call.
Pardon?
Roll call.
Oh, excuse me. Roll call.
Steelman is not here. Keaton,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Robel,
Here.
DeYoung,
Here.
Slopsama here, and Velmuth is not.
Okay. Thank you, Lois. Okay, declare any conflict of interest? None? Okay, public comment. Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the PC. Comments shall be carried out in accordance with the following rules and procedures. Comments shall be directed to the PC with questions directed to the chair. Any person wishing to address the PC shall speak from the lectern or use the hand raise feature on Zoom and state his or her name and address. Persons may address the PC on matters that are relevant to the township planning and zoning issues. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer PC's members' questions. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes. Public hearing, none.
You know, we gotta ask if we
Oh.
have a comment.
Fine, okay. Okay. Public comment?
No raise hands in Zoom.
No raise hands on Zoom. Okay. That's how we get through it, Mike. We don't ask.
Just keep it on the go.
I'm a fill-in, sorry.
No, you're doing great.
He's on a mission.
Okay. Okay, our next would be approving the minutes. See approval of the minutes for our PC meeting October 4th. Item number 7. Do we? Did any, did those look okay to everybody?
I'll make a motion to accept them.
I'll second the motion. And roll call,
Roll call?
Velmuth is not available. Jacobson,
Yes.
Robel,
Yes.
Steelman is not available. DeYoung.
Yes.
Slopsama. Yes. Keaton.
Yes.
Thank
Okay. Okay, the next, let me see. Okay. Correspondence, none. Reports, presentations, and announcements. I don't see Bob here, so I don't believe there's anything from Mr. Hall. Okay. The second one was from Rachel, and she had asked that I read that out loud. So. So this is from Rachel. The chair report. Our guest speaker tonight is Brian McKinnon, the superintendent of Elk Rapids School Districts. He's going to share some inevitable changes occurring in the district that directly impact Mill Creek and Elk Rapids School District. As we work together on our master plan, the timing is of the utmost importance. Because I am unable to attend tonight, I rely on all of you to listen to make, to the challenges the district faces and work together with the school district and our residents to develop a master plan that is helpful to all. This may need some additional public outreach, input, and planning associated with these unique circumstances. Consider how this topic can be added to the material at our 11/7 workshop and or follow-up events. Number 4, master plan workshop. I have sent the 11/7 workshop flyers to Mill Creek for inclusion in their weekly email school newsletter. 5, master plan open house. I'd like to send those who attended the open house a thank you, link to the results, and an invitation to the workshop. If you are all in agreement, please send me the sign-in sheet so that I may do so. 6, zoning ordinance projects. After our October meeting, it was clear we need to define substantial change as a group. Please refer to my attachments regarding the substantial change discussion. If it will be imperative a decision be made tonight and subsequently shared with the township board at our next joint meeting. 7, joint meeting discussion. Supervisor Pop sent me an email on 10/23 indicating the board will not have a quorum on 10/9. I've asked him to share 2 or 3 dates. The majority of the board is available between 11/9 and 12/7. I will share those options with you as soon as I receive them. Please decide on a new meeting date and let me know. In order to ensure we are prepared for this meeting, you should review the agenda items for this meeting and determine how, who, and what will take place at a joint meeting. Agenda, master plan, group discussion, considerations, possible forward movement, master plan progress and steps, and zoning projects updates, including sharing how we are proceeding with the substantial changes. Budget. The planning commission amended request for an additional 25,000 passed on the township board's October 10th meeting. Materials related to this are at the end of the packet. Agenda. I've added an item at the end of the agenda keynote to share with the township board. I think we will improve communication if we take 3 minutes at the end of each meeting to list the items we want to share with the township board. Thank you. Okay. And Carl, did you have anything, Carl, for the zoning?
No.
Okay. At this time, I'd like,
I think, did you skip Heidi's?
yeah, Heidi didn't really have anything on her, so it was attached, but she didn't ask it to be read in, so. Now let's see, Brian, at this point, would like you to give us your presentation. And those for your packet was 86 to 105. Please, go ahead.
Floor's all mine?
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
All yours.
Good evening. I've got some additional packets. I don't know what Ms. Steelman, looks like she did include this in your packet
Yes.
today, so
Yes.
I don't need those. I just realized those were in black and white.
Some of those people might want.
So just want to say thanks for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Some of you I know in different ways. Some I'm going to learn more about you tonight, get to know you a lot over the next couple of months, because it probably won't be the last time you see me here or next week. I think we're scheduled at Mill Creek as well to be part of that planning. Just a little bit of background about myself, but this is not about me tonight. I moved up to this area in 2003, grew up in a small rural community in Mayville, Michigan, down in the thumb. Land of sugar beets and cornfields is what we like to say. So moved to West Branch, when I graduated from college. I just wanted to move up north. Anywhere up north of Bay City was north to me, and it moved up to West Branch area, taught 4 years. And I got married and moved up in this direction. So I've taught at Lakeland Elementary School since 2003. Became the principal down there in 2009. Was going to be a 1-year gig, and it lasted about 14 years. So through that time, I've got to know Mr. Keaton's family as well, and some of yours as well. Took over as the interim superintendent last year, was the last 2 months interim superintendent, and then actually Lakeland's principal as well to end that year as Superintendent Brown retired. Long story short, end of June, it was decided that I'd be the next guy to do my best to lead our district into the future. Upon taking over in July, with the help of our new finance director, Lauren McCann, who was nice enough to come with me tonight as well. We identified some difficult but necessary discussions that we need to start having as a district. What I'm going to talk about tonight, I know some of you might know a lot about this, but some of you might not know anything about this. And this is kind of the challenge that I've faced the last 4 weeks as we started our communication plan. I'm here to dispel myths, answer questions that you may have, and then we'll be available this Friday. We're doing a community conversation at Mill Creek, 8:30 to 9:30. Some in the audience have been there. I welcome you to come as well. Because we did start a communication plan based on our legal guidance from our legal team that works with the school about 4 weeks ago. This is about Mill Creek Elementary School, but it's not just about Mill Creek Elementary School. It is about sustaining and maintaining Elk Rapids schools. It's in its entirety. This story begins about the financial dilemma that we are in right now as a district, and inevitably its impact on Mill Creek and what we're trying to stop happening to Mill Creek and continue to sustain and maintain our district and our community schools to the best of our ability. Like I said, this was an idea that this was an idea that we had to look at based on the concept of the Elk Rapids schools going out of formula. In the state of Michigan, there's 2 ways in which you are funded. There's multiple ways, and it's in this packet, whether it's state aid, whether it's federal funds, whether it's demographic funding through your, your populations that you serve. But biggest thing to know tonight is there's in formula districts and out of formula districts. In formula districts are funded based on how many students are in the school on that first Wednesday in October. They get allocated a certain amount of money based on your total enrollment. That's in formula. Out of formula districts are funded through the concept of our taxable values of our properties exceed what the district would bring in based on student enrollment. So then that transition from student enrollment into funding our school by the taxable value is what we call out of formula. There's a process in between where 96%, 98% of the schools in the state of Michigan are in formula. And then as a couple things start to happen, and that's what's happened in this district, really since about 2013, we've seen increasing in taxable values in this region, and then a slow decline of residential students in this region. Now, when I speak to you tonight, I'm not just talking about Mill Creek residential students, I'm talking about the district as a whole. Really was exasperated starting in about 2017 when we started to see taxable values in this region increase 5%, 5%, 5% stacked on top of each other. Last year, we saw a taxable value increase in this region of almost 9%. It was 8.8%. What that does then is that along with residential student decreases starts to transition from in formula, which the neighboring schools around us, except Bel Air are funded, to this out of formula process, which really is what initiated this discussion that we're in tonight. There are anywhere between 34, depending on what you read, 38 and 44 districts that are out of formula in the state of Michigan, and that's out of 822 districts in the state of Michigan. So we're in a very small minority, but I am here to tell you that in the area in which we reside, from Anakama up to Sheboygan area, this will be a problem that many districts are facing as two things happen. Your taxable values increase, which is great for us that reside over here, but it does make it difficult for those families of childbearing age to move into, find housing, to continue to support our schools with students. There are 5 in the region that are out of formula right now. That is Bel Air, that is Northport, that is Leland, that is Frankfurt, and that is Glen Lake. Based on our trajectory, next year, we will be 100% out of formula. Our district has been slowly going out of formula. That was really exasperated the last few years when we saw that 5% stacked on top, 5% stacked on 5%, and then it hit us at 9%. What's different about our story in Elk Rapids is when those other schools in the region went out of formula, their enrollment was already small. Their enrollment was traditionally usually about 500 or less in those communities. So go out of formula when your district is small like that is actually a good thing, because now you're not worried about how many kids are in your building. You're funded totally from your taxable value. When you're a small district, that has its advantages, but it also has some disadvantages that those districts are working through as well. What is different about Elk Rapids is we're about double the enrollment than those neighboring districts that have went out of formula. We're currently sitting at about 1,250 students in our district. And if you have had a chance to look at it, you will see that our district has been anywhere from 1,600 students at one point in time down to about 1,100 students. Right now, we're about 1,250, which kind of is our sweet spot right now where we are. Our district is currently enrolls about 2/3 of our population, over 800 kids, are residential kids. But what we started to do, and was a regional leader going back 20 years to 2000, is we have always been a destination school, a school of choice hotbed. Come to Lakeland, Mill Creek, the middle school. We will support your kids' education. It helped our programming. It allowed us to add programs because we might have only had 2/3 of the kids from our residential areas, but when we always brought in these school of choice kids, it added to our academic programs, our art programs, our extracurricular programs as well, in which we were able to grow. So being a school of choice hotbed was actually a very positive thing up until about 2017, when we had this unpredictable increases of taxable values, which then made it more and more difficult for young families to move into the area. Now that we are going out of formula next year, and we have 1/3 of our population in enrollment being school of choice families and students, once they're in our district, we legally have to keep them in our district. Law will not allow you to exclude them from their educational opportunities once they're in our district. Why is that important? Because starting next year, we will no longer get a cent for any student that does not reside in Elk Rapids schools. And we can't just get rid of them. We're forced to educate them for 13 years. Our funding for Elk Rapids schools, it will be the same, based now not on what we call butts in that seat on that first Wednesday in October. It'll strictly be funded by the taxable values of our properties in the Elk Rapids schools region. But ultimately, that's the dilemma. We're going to be funded to educate about 850 kids, but we've got about 1,250 in district moving forward. What our board identified, and that's truly what we're talking about when we call being out of formula, is what we're talking about. Our story going out of formula is different than Bel Air's. Our story going out of formula is different than Northport, those that have lived here for a while. It's different than Frankfurt. It's different than, those other schools because we're a larger district going on a formula. And we built this district for 20 years on school of choice being a positive things, and our discussions have not been about residential kids versus school of choice kids, because it's a double-edged sword. We need those students in here to offer the programs that our community wants and our kids want. We want choir and band. We just don't want band. We want 6 AP classes at the high school program. We just don't want 3. But you have to be able to fund those programs through our students, and you also have to have the population large enough to serve that. So what our board identified right off the bat coming in June is really 7 main goals that our district has identified they wanted me to work on moving forward. You can read them there. Basically, who are we in 2023? We had to identify who we are before we can move forward. The 7 goals were maintain the current building structure. So our board likes that we have 4 buildings in district: high school, a middle school, 2 elementary schools. They like that in those 4 buildings, we actually have 6 programs. On the high school end of that, we have an alternative ed program called Sunrise Academy. We've had that for nearly 20 years. On the opposite end of that, we have a Way to Grow program that works with birth to 5-year-old preschool. And then your typical Lakeland and Mill Creek Elementary School, middle schools, high school. They like the current programs that we have. We want to continue to grow our programs, but like you guys are working on your strategic plan, we too want to develop that strategic plan moving forward. And as we add programs or take away programs, we're doing that through a strategic plan that lasts in our world usually 3 to 5 years. Our current grade level enrollment over the last couple of years has been 90 to 110 students. We believe that's sustainable. That's kind of the sweet spot in this district. We don't believe we can go to 1,600 kids again, but we don't want to drop much lower than that either, or you can't allow those first 3 things to happen. So what we would like to see is basically Mill Creek continue with 50 students per grade, which equates to about 300 kids in that building. And we also want to see Lakeland at 300 kids in that building as well. That would be a slight increase for Mill Creek, but based on Lakeland being more residential students up there, we're expecting a little decline in that enrollment up there as well, down to 300 students in that building. We like our current enrollment of 1,200 to 1,300 kids, which is basically 100 kids per graduating class. We want to continue to work on the organizational strength of Elk Rapids schools and then advocacy for our programs. So I'm just going to kind of work through this pretty quickly here. I don't think I have to be detailed. So, or as detailed that's maybe in here. So ultimately what we developed coming out of those 7 goals, 3 options that the district could look forward over the next year to 5 years to put in place. Based on our trajectory, both fiscally and also educationally, we looked at 3 options. After one meeting, the board removed option 1. Option 1 was to stay status quo. If we don't make some foundational changes in the way that we are programming our district right now, and based on, I say thank God, we had wise business managers prior to Lori and me, and wise superintendents as well. We have a fund balance that is healthy. It is slightly over 11% right now. That is going to allow us to sustain a little bit of this until we make that decision moving forward. But we only have about 1 year, because if we don't make any changes structurally right now, we would be looking at within 1 year that fund balance being below the 5% takeover, and we would look at state takeover of Elk Rapids schools. It wouldn't just be at Mill Creek, it would be our district as a whole. There's nothing good when you're looking at state takeover. They basically come in, they remove the authority of our board, my authority, my business manager's authority, and they basically run your district to get you back fiscally sound, and we lose total local control. We don't want that. Our board was savvy to say, even though there's an option listed, we appreciate communication, not an option moving forward, because we do not want Lansing coming into our district. So ultimately, we're down to 2 options. 2 options that involve my communication tonight is option 2 is acknowledging that we're going on a formula and we own it. And we strictly focus on educating the residential kids in our district. When we do that, we have to realize in order to get down to 750 to 800 kids, which our numbers show, we will have some major changes to this district, including the programs we offer, the personnel that we have in place currently, and also the facilities that we have as well. Because even though based on our residential and school of choice enrollment right now of graduating class sizes of 85 to 110, when we remove school of choice options from our district, what happens is we'll go to graduating sizes of about 45 to 60. So basically, our graduating class sizes are going to be almost cut in half within a short period of time. Therefore, that's where the board has great concern of we cannot continue the same programmings. We will not be able to potentially offer 2 elementary buildings when you're only looking at, instead of 100 kids per grade, 60 kids per grade. Option 2, I believe we can do, and I think we can become a district of 750 to 800 kids. But the next 4 years are not going to be fun getting there. It's just not, because we will have to make some substantial changes in foundationally how we operate our district. Once you get there, I think we'll be okay. But it's now the tough choices that we will have to place to get there. Our concern, though, is when we do go to only educating residential kids and we remove, remember, we can't get rid of that third of our population that's school of choice and in there right now. They just gradually remove themselves because they graduate out. We won't allow any new kindergarten school of choice families in or any new school of choice families in. So next year's kindergarten classroom or grade level will be much smaller because we can't allow to sustain our district any new school of choice kids in. Now, what's going to challenge this a little bit is the next 2 years, we do anticipate based on our numbers, we're going to see a little bit of a bump because of the pandemic baby boom that we're all going to look at. Our 3-year-old programs are waitlisted already. When people were in the pandemic era, our birth rates went up. They did, but it is not sustainable. Within 2 years, we're gonna drop back down again and be looking at those graduating class sizes of 45 to 60 kids. Option 2, the other part of this is we've talked to the neighboring districts that are currently out of formula. When you talk to Bel Air, when you talk to Frankfurt, those districts I've talked to about, the thing that we have to realize is parents are used to certain choices in their child's education, especially when they get to the high school. And if we're not able to offer the course alignment that our parents in our community have known up to this point, and wants, when we're not able to offer the extracurricular sports, the arts programs, the music programs, traditionally what you see happening is your residential population that you have also starts to leave, because we happen to neighbor the largest district in northern Michigan who is going to continue to offer those programs. Elementaries wise, we probably will stay where we are, but when kids get older, they want choices, they want the programs, and they will go to those bigger districts that are able to sustain what they're doing. Option 2 we can do, but it's going to be tough getting there. And that is where the discussion about which elementary school most likely will have to be potentially closed based on several factors. Right now that's been identified as Mill Creek is what they would have to look at if that occurs. Option 3 is what is somewhat unique and somewhat an option for Mill Creek based on a few factors. Mill Creek has sustained for 30 years. Mill Creek happens to be on a corridor that's a main vein that runs, east and west in this region. Mill Creek has had a high number of school and choice students enrolled there for over 20 years. It has been either 25%, almost up to 40% of that population has been non-residential students for many years. When we talk to the state of Michigan and we talk to them about our dilemma that we're facing, they don't care that we're going out of formula. They don't care about the district's financial trajectory if we don't make some foundational changes. What they do care about is removing choice for Williamsburg students and also the surrounding areas that have come to Mill Creek and then transition to the middle school and the high school. As soon as MDE, Department of Education, heard about what looks like we most likely will have to do, which is closing a building down here that is sustained for 30 years, not only for Williamsburg, but for the neighboring communities. They then have allowed us to look at this concept of authorizing through Elk Rapids schools, a potential public school academy at Mill Creek. This is somewhat of a unique situation that has not really occurred up here in northern Michigan. But we do believe that there is precedent in the state of Michigan that other districts are choosing to do this and have used this traditional path that we've been on, being the school of choice in district formula. And it's gotten to the point in which we are at today and last year, which is a very successful district for many years. But that traditional path is no longer an option when you're going out of formula. We have to look at doing things differently. We have to look at this as our pivot point in this future of our district. Any of you that are in any business, any of you that have been through any organization, there comes a period of time to sustain. You can either buck the trend and just continue on your traditional path. And you know that limits your growth. You know that that has some negative connotations to it as well. Or you look at any available options that might exist based on a reduction of our programming at probably 20% within the next 2 years. And also based on the plan that I've worked with these people for 23 years. And I want to be the last person that comes in here and starts laying people off and closing building. I presented this to the board back in October 2nd as an option to consider. What we are trying to do, number one, and I don't care what you have heard out there, we are trying to sustain and maintain the school of choice and the educational options in Williamsburg. That is number one. We are not trying to do anything other than what has existed here for 30 years. This is not a fiscal ploy. This is not a political motivated event. I'm trying to save options in this region for Williamsburg and the surrounding areas. I'm trying to keep jobs in this community that we desperately need. And ultimately that also impacts not only Williamsburg, but the Elk Rapids school systems as well. It is unusual because usually when you hear of charter schools, I don't know anyone's background and I don't mean to be disrespectful of anybody. There have been situations in charter schools that are very local that have not been perceived in previous times as being successful. They don't offer bus programs. They don't offer food programs. What are their intervention programs? We are not doing that. Our goal, if we can get endorsed by the state of Michigan on this unique opportunity, is to sustain and maintain what we have. We are trying to keep local control in Mill Creek. We are trying to avoid the sale of that building because what we have seen in this region is when buildings become available, a for-profit charter school will come in, will buy that school. Most likely will start at K5. Within 3 years, they grow to K8. Within 3 years after that, they go to K12. That is going to have a negative impact on not only Elk Rapids schools, but it's also going to have a negative impact on the local charter schools that are here and the public schools that sit on the west and east side of us, because then that reduces the options for those schools that are not out of formula funded, but are funded by in-district standards, meaning how many butts are in the seat on that Wednesday in October. So this is what this is about. It's keeping the doors open. It's keeping Lansing out of our district, allowing us to make what choices that we have and sustain what we have. We are trying to avoid a charter entity from coming in and buying that school. It is a beautiful school that's almost 30 years old. Our district has done a good job of keeping that facility looking as it is and make sure that it's efficiently ran. It sits on almost 15 acres. It's beautiful. When you drive up that school on a winter day or a cherry orchard day in the fall, it is breathtaking. It truly is. That will be highly regarded if it becomes available in the for-profit sector. A lot of the entities that do these charter schools are connected to a university or for a for-profit entity. Grand Valley State University does this a lot. Saginaw Valley does this a lot. Lake Superior State does this a lot. There's others out there as well. What we're trying to do is say to the state of Michigan, we believe Elk Rapids schools can do that as well, if not better than these agencies that are trying to make money off of our kids' education. So we have asked, why can't we, as a local district, charter our own school? That ultimately has opened and closed some doors for us. At this time, based on the legal counsel that we have, based on the state recognizing we most likely will have to close that school, and it's going to remove choice in this region, they are allowing us to move forward with requesting authorization of Elk Rapids schools continuing the partnership with Mill Creek Education over the next 5 years as an authorized charter school in the area. All we're trying to do, there's no smoke and mirrors here. There's nothing other than keeping choice in this region. Now, in order to do that, there is some things that we need to look at. The first thing that we and the board thought was essential is that staff that is down there has to stay down there, because parents are in your community is choosing to come there because of the staff that is there. We have met with multiple agencies to see if this is even a possibility. And I was very surprised, humbled and ecstatic when our local union group, Elk Rapids Education Association, which supports that school and has for 30 years, saw this as we're trying. If we're going out of formula, let's fight for what we've got to even see if it's an option. And they have endorsed our plan moving forward because they see it as saving jobs in their union. It's now even went to our UNISERV director who oversees MEA for this region. They have also endorsed this program as a unique way to save jobs in this region. We've had to look into other entities as well. They've asked a lot of questions, just like I'm sure you're going to at some point in time. And those questions, we have reached back to our legal counsel, who is trained through Troon Law Firm, and they work with a branch solely with charter schools. And that's who we had to vet this throughout the summer. All our board has done is they've had to change our policy as it currently stood in our policy handbook that basically says that we now want the authority to consider to authorize Mill Creek Elementary School as a public school academy of Elk Rapids schools moving forward. We're now engaging in a process at looking at who in the region may want to serve as that initial authorizer. We're looking at forming a school board down here. As I'm looking at these pictures on the wall, the circle of this life that we live is so, it just is. And we toured Yuba School up the road just 2 weeks ago to look at the work over there. What eventually happens is Mill Creek Academy, if that's the direction the state allows us to go, actually becomes its own district with its own school board that I supervise and ensure that the policy is followed. The same teachers stay there. Now the MEA has endorsed this. Our transportation is now contracted with Mill Creek Academy, that we still run the same bus routes. Our current custodial staff is contracted to Mill Creek Academy. Our current food service department is contracted to Mill Creek Academy. All those services stay in place. Our hope, that is, if the state gives us the blessing, and we've just started the request to even consider this is not a done deal, is that the only thing our community recognizes as a change is the name on the school. That's it. We, Elk Rapids schools, take on a lot more oversight from a fiscal analysis piece, from a supervising piece, but the actual board, like these schools had, is now and would be now created. It is not an elected board like you guys are. It is an appointed board. Elk Rapids Schools gets to appoint those that would serve on Mill Creek Academy. There is a process that they have to apply for. It will be me and 3 board members that get to select who gets to sit on this Board of Education, a 5-member board that would oversee the policy, the implementation, and the practice of Elk Rapids, Mill Creek Potential Academy. We have identified some things that we will be looking into this board. One, because an academy does not have a boundary, this academy can have anybody in the state of Michigan serve on that Board of Education. But our board doesn't want that. We want somebody who has ties to Mill Creek already. But we don't want them too tightly tied to Mill Creek right now. We want them involved, but not too involved. We want also somebody that resides in this area. We want somebody that might have a connection to Mill Creek, but also sees this as really sustaining and maintaining Elk Rapids schools, because either they graduated from there, they want their kids to have the same opportunities, or they've got kids in the middle school and the high school, so they see the interconnectedness of this as well. Ultimately, why this is beneficial is because as an academy, there's no longer a residential area that's identified. So what that means is Elk Rapids Central Campus, which would be the current elementary up there, the high school and the middle school, they will receive funding to operate through the taxable out of formula values that we have in this region. Mill Creek, because it doesn't have a residential area that is identified as a charter school, it now gets funded by how many butts are in that seat on the count day and that first Wednesday in October. Ultimately, if this school functions between 200 and 300 students, it operates itself. And the funding that's generated at Mill Creek continues to sustain and maintain Elk Rapids schools. As these students transition up to middle school, then the taxable value of being out of formula funds their next 6 years of education. In order to do this, we've met each week with multiple stakeholders in this community. I don't know how to demonstrate this or how to communicate this in only a fashion that is transparent and honest, and just discussions. The counsel that we received from our law firm, like, this is pretty complicated stuff that you guys are working on and you figured out. You may want to bring in a public relations firm to communicate this. As our board has talked about it, as Lori and I have talked about it, we think that we don't need that. We think that we need to sit in meetings like this, roll up our sleeves, talk in very honest terms of what we're doing, and let you know there is no smoke and mirrors here. We're just trying to sustain and maintain our district. And we recognize we may be going on a formula, but we're at a point where we need to try any allowable and legal options that are out there that may buck the trend of traditional education. But our students are worth it, and our schools are worth it. And that's ultimately what I'm here talking to you about. 3 months ago, before I took this job, I was as traditional educationist as they've come. But when I looked at the fiscal direction of our district and ultimately what we would be looking at doing, I had to give up my last 25 years in public education and what I believed, and said, this is not about me anymore. As a leader of this district, your job is to protect the education of the students that are in this right now, and the jobs of the teachers that I've worked with for the last 20 years in this district. If this is something that we can consider and ultimately saves and sustains what we've had, we have to see if this is an option based on many hours of meetings with our law firms, 3 separate meetings with the charter branch of the Michigan Department of Education. We do believe that this is an option that is worth working through, communicating to our constituents and advocating on the behalf of the current students of Mill Creek and the next generations that we hope will come. I know that's a lot. Planning to be there next week. I forgot that is a workshop meeting, right? It's your strategic plan that you guys are talking about,
Yeah.
right?
But yeah.
So Miss Steelman came to 2 presentations that we have. Second one, she reached out, said, I'd love you to come talk to the township so that they're aware of it. I said, I appreciate you letting me know because they were next on my list to call the next day because I didn't even know how to get down here. She let me know about tonight's meeting. That's why I'm here. She also let me know about next Thursday, it's not deer season, so it's 7th.
Tuesday.
Yeah, the 7th. I think that's at Mill Creek. I'll be there to talk to anybody else that we want. You guys have easy access to me. And then typically what I'm doing with Mill Creek, I'm meeting with, they're just transparent meetings. So you guys know how board meetings work. They're not always as conducive for question and answer, like it's more of a formal process where there can be community input, but there's not a lot of give and take of information there. We have to run our board meetings as you guys do. It is a public forum. It is somewhat not a give and take of information though. What we've decided to do though is after those board meetings, then we do these community forums, which is just me, sleeves rolled up, drinking coffee in the morning, and then parents can ask me anything they want. And I will be there to say yes, no, or think of it this way, or we don't know, and we will get back to you. Every time we went to a community meeting, they've asked us something that we didn't know. Might have looked like we weren't prepared, but we're in an uncharted water here. This has not happened a lot in the state of Michigan. And ultimately, those questions go back to our legal counsel, go back to MDE and get us clarity, because when we start filling out this paperwork path that goes along with it, we want to make sure that we've got the most information that we've had. There's one coming up this Friday. We'll do it again in 2 Fridays. In between there, I'm willing to come down and give you an honest perspective of where we are at. You know, right now, the big thing is why are we here? That's the question. Like, how did this get this way? Elk Rapids has a history of just, a great educational piece. It's no one's fault. It's 2 things. We're proud that our taxable values have increased to the level that they have. And when they do that, it does make it difficult for our younger families to move in. Those 2 factors alone are where we are. There was a belief at one time, that's why Mill Creek is here, that the growth in the district was going to come from the south end, because you got Elk and Torch and Michigan kind of strangling growth up there in the north end, but this was going to be where the growth has occurred. We all know the things that have went through over the last couple of years down here. The number one thing is we've talked to realtors of why isn't that growth happening? It is, and I don't mean to, I just have to be careful what I say, because it is the growth of the horse industry down here that we didn't anticipate. And what we've seen that has occurred, the residential values, the properties that are available down right now. I ask, how is this happening? Like, where is this? And they've educated me, like, that horse industry is not just Michigan based. Like, this is a global competition down there. And there are people coming in that are paying cash above value for anything we can get our hands on. When the real estate agents we've talked to, which then somewhat strangles that growth of that young family out there. We're not doomed. Our district is not done. We're just re-identifying who we are. We're trying to be as creative, that is legal and allowable based on our circumstances of what we have in the Golden Nugget, which has been a Mill Creek for many years. And over the next few months, I welcome the opportunity to come back and just give you updates on what it is. I do counsel you, or I do ask you to realize what the media sometimes communicates is not, as you guys know, is not always accurate. This is very complicated information when it comes to school finance. And I really just cherish, they've done a good job so far, but this is starting to get out there a little bit, both regionally and now statewide. Pick up the phone, call the high school. I read this today. I don't understand it. And let us tell you our story because our story is gonna be transparent and as honest as we can moving forward.
Can I ask just a
Yeah.
clarifying question? I just want to make sure I heard you right. So Mill Creek will continue to be K-5. Is that right? Just
So
that-
one of the
that's their
things,
purview.
so one of the things, and we had to write this policy, and we did recognize that this I'm just gonna be honest with you and talk, it inhibited growth of the district, so truly. Typically, when these charter schools are created, they do want to grow. Because what it does do, as it gets bigger, eventually the for-profit agencies reap the financial benefits of that. What we did in our policy, because the concept is of this matriculation agreement, which means basically what we want to ensure our parents that if you continue to go to Mill Creek, when you're done in 5th grade, what has traditionally happened is almost 100% of those kids have went into Cherryland Middle School at in Elk Rapids schools. So what we had to do is this concept of matriculating. We still want Lakeland and Mill Creek. All we're trying to do is what we have. This is our sweet spot. We want them to matriculate into the middle school together. So why I say that is where we started 4 weeks ago, I'm going to be honest with you, was kind of like the shock. Our parents heard about this and they're like, where did this come from? Like, how didn't we know this? You know, it was kind of where I was back in June. As we've educated people over the last 4 weeks, it's went from that to like, holy cow, this might save us. And if we're gonna do it, why are we just doing a K-5? Like, let's go K-8. But we have to remember, the only way the state is allowing us even to start moving forward with this is we're just trying to sustain and maintain that K-5 building. What we did in our policy is to write and update the policy to reflect what we have. We identified a school of approximately 300 students. We identified a school, so like as we're looking for what is this charter? 300 students. Preschool through 5th grade. The same assessment schedule that we currently have in Elk Rapids schools. We identified that there has to be a lunch program. We had to identify that we are still going to offer transportation as transportation as allowable now. So yes, the policy was written to limit the growth because we don't think we can get up to 1,600 kids in this district and do it well. And when you go behind just that K-5 to a K-8 model, there's a lot of additional costs that go into when you get into middle school. And we don't want to see that. We just want what we have. So as we wrote our policy, we identified what that building can look like through that authorization period.
So you're still gonna allow those children from that school to flow into the Elk Rapids
Through
middle
what,
school?
that was a huge thing that our parents talked to us about. So you're telling me if my kid is in Mill Creek as a kindergarten, they continue on for 6 years. And they create all these friends and they have this, but so residential kids are in already, but it was like,
Right.
do school of choice kids
That's
get
what
in?
I'm asking.
The answer is yes, through this matriculation agreement. If you leave Mill Creek as a 5th grader, you have first right assignment into Cherryland Middle School,
So
whether you're residential or school of choice.
So one more question is, are you shutting off school of choice, starting like somebody on the outside, not at this academy? If somebody isn't in the system, are you gonna allow schools of choice kids to come into Elk Rapids Middle School and High School?
Middle school and high school, as long as we have not exceeded that 100 student planned graduation size. Yes,
Okay, so you'll allow it just to certain limits.
correct.
What you're gonna find is that when you start this, and they'll be full, so they won't be. And those grade be able to.
There's that theory, scarcity builds like urgency, like if they know there's 50 slots left, no one applies. But if they think there's 5 slots left, suddenly you have all these people that want to come there, but we are going to cap it around that 100 student.
And you also have
Piece.
to leave room for your own school students to build them in, so.
Right.
You can't
Right.
keep it as open as it's been in the past, it'll be very limited, you will see school of choice. Good planning for long-term planning, but you gotta leave 2 or 3 slots in every grade because people in your community, they come back. We have a number of students who are like privately educated that live in Elk Rapids and have the right to come back to that school first choice. You have to leave those things open. So school choice will be different as been in the past for anybody basically until this last year's come in. You're gonna have to look at long-term planning.
Which kind of fits where you guys are next week, right? And actually is where our district is too, because our strategic plan just happens to be ending next year as well, and we need to do the same thing.
Was you going to plan to be at the workshop on the 7th?
I am. It's on
You
my
know what I
calendar.
was wondering is to talk to everybody, you know, like the CD, like the presentation you just gave is very informative. If, what would you think of it, like if you had some CD people? It's kind of fast paced.
Yeah,
What about a CDs that you can hand where they could go home or something like that, where they could watch it? And clearly understand what's going on? Would that be
I
a tool or
don't know
no?
that I heard you right. CD.
Like a CD that you would slide into a computer, something
Oh,
that they
yeah.
could take back and watch.
Like a video of this.
Yeah,
Like just
something
that's a
I'm
good
wondering,
idea.
would that be
Not a problem at all. We
You could just make a YouTube.
they call
video.
CDs now YouTube.
YouTube.
Well, they don't, but they do.
Even maybe with the link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just a general overview of what we got. You know, that actually is a good idea because the problem that I have is I did this like 12 to 16 times. And even though the message is the same, based on a question that somebody asked, I might give, you know, other information. So what you're saying would at least let the general understanding be the same, and that's a great idea.
they could go back and look at it whenever they wanted to and sit and listen to it and listen to the whole thing, because
Yeah.
that's very informative.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We have it on Zoom right now being recorded.
Okay.
Oh.
I know that was a lengthy discussion and I apologize for taking up so many minutes. They only get shorter from here though. Once we have that background information, then it's typically just coming in and answering questions that you're hearing in the community and Brian, what's up? Like, help me understand this. We do believe we'll have some guidance from the state based on our application. Probably, we hope by the end of May, which also kind of coincides with not end of May, end of April. Thank you for that patient.
Really long.
Yeah.
time.
Well, believe me, the waiting is killer. It is, but that also kind of coincides with how we do kindergarten orientation and roundup. So it works in the world of education.
And then what time is that on the 3rd and the 10th?
The third is this third is this Friday, right? They're 8:30 to 9:30. So we did one at night. We did 3 in the morning. And the feedback is parents want it in the morning because they bring the kids in, they drop them off at 8:30, they go eat breakfast. And they just come and sit and talk with me. So we are now doing these community conversations. At least the ones at Mill Creek at 8:30 in the morning. So it would not be the 10th though, it would be the 3rd. Well,
first
hold on, I'm
and
gonna be
third
busy on
Friday.
the 17th. It'll probably be the 3rd and the 16th because,
We follow the board meeting.
yeah. Just write down the 3rd. Because of deer season, I probably will not be there on the 17th.
Just a quick question. Is it possible to get a copy of your enrollment projections that you have in your?
Yeah,
Or just,
they should be in there.
okay.
Are you talking future or past?
Actually, future, in terms of inclusion in the master plan document there, it sounds
Yeah.
like you've done some.
You know, when's Miss Steelman gonna be back or who's, I think you said she's out of state.
I think Rachel's gonna be,
Eh.
she'll be back for next month, you know.
As you guys in that, what I would suggest doing is any information that you want for that master plan. Just send me a list because
Okay.
that's probably not all you're gonna want.
Yeah.
And we can
I'll
break
send-
that
I'll-
down and you
I'll
want that
just-
brought down by Williamsburg, Whitewater
Yes.
Township, what,
Yeah.
you know, we can get that information for you.
Was that work done internally or did you have someone else help you with that or?
So it was done internally, but
Okay.
now in
I'm
this
just-
day and age, birth rates and stuff are on,
Yeah.
you know, line and stuff like that. What makes this a little bit more difficult is some of the kids are Grand Traverse County and some are
Oh.
interim. So you gotta take that into consideration too, that may.
Yeah, they're not all locals. Okay.
So all I would say is when you compile that list of what you want, I can write that down. We'll do our best to get it to you by next, if it's not by next Thursday
Okay.
or Tuesday, we would get it to you from there.
were there any questions? Any other questions?
Thank you, very informative. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's okay if I leave?
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, the next thing was unfinished master plan. Resident outreach may participate and review and discuss the master plan open house results. I want to say that format that you guys put together for that, when I went through this, I mean, it was great. Absolutely great to see. What brought it to light is you could see the dots, you could see what people are actually really interested in. It's just it's just an outstanding job.
Great. I'm glad you liked the way that was set up. Trying to get creative with it. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to put that together. So Randy, did you want to start or do you want me to jump in with that?
No, we talked before about potentially walking through the process that we have for next week.
Okay.
As well as spending some time on the goals that were distributed to everyone. And as you mentioned, this includes the ROS members who are in attendance here.
Yes.
We had hoped to have another meeting before this one, but we'll have to combine everything together and try to get some sense of being final with the event that's next week already. And we also have some challenges with the printer too, as I remember.
Yeah, we always have to leave a little time in there for the printer to get their work done. No, I'm glad you liked the format last time with the open house. We had a great turnout, almost 80 people, I think, signed in, but I know that I think Rachel was up there most of the time and said a lot of times there might be a couple and only one of them would sign in. So I'm sure you had more than the number of people that signed in that were participating throughout the evening. So that's great. If you'll remember, and I'm sorry I didn't bring a picture of this, but it's probably in your packet. I had that upside down pyramid in there that talk about how we're narrowing in on things. We started with broader goals and we keep getting more input, narrowing it down. So we're kind of getting to that point now where this next session, we want to have some goals developed that are going to come back to you to look at. And to give you an idea where that's going, you have in your packet the planning principles sheets that were put together here. The Whitewater Township planning principles, goals, and implementation sheets. There's a cover sheet and then there's like 4 more of them behind it. And each one of them are based off the initial principles that were in your 2015 master plan. But then there's a whole bunch more detail in here about some more specific goals and objectives that we've started to form into each one of those 4 categories. And those objectives are the things that are now coming out of the input that's been received, both from the survey and from the open house. So.
No, I think that's what those were. No, I'm wondering if that was in the packet.
No, I don't.
No, this was the stuff that Randy sent out on the email.
Oh,
I've got extra copies of that if they're.
okay.
I could use them.
That's what I printed out
Yeah. Oh,
right
okay.
there.
Should say Laura on the front.
Oh, okay, right here. Okay.
Oh.
They may have been added to your website later too, I think. I saw them up there, but they weren't like in the packet. They were like a supplemental attachment or something.
The printed front and back and both sets are together.
Okay.
All right, so does everyone have a copy of those now? Okay. So where we're kind of going with this is kind of Randy and I looking at all of the different input that was received and started doing some back and forth on this and forming ideas for what the goals and objectives could be. Now I've done this in some communities I've been in the past where you can literally do 3 different sessions, 2 to 3 hours long a piece to try to narrow some of these things down. We're not working with that kind of time. So we're trying to offer some suggestions based on the feedback that was there to the best of our ability to kind of get things rolling and moving along a little bit. This is the first time, I think, that anybody in this group, the Planning Commission or ROS, is seeing any of this. What we wanted to do was get you a little bit familiar with some of these ideas and what we're planning on doing tonight. And we'll circle back to this in just a moment. Randy's going to actually go through all of these, but is get some feedback from you to make sure we've kind of got it about where we want it for now. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not quite to that point yet, but the idea is we want to take these back for the next session that we're going to do on November 7th next week. And it's hard to believe that that's going to be November 7th. So we want to go back and we're going to have the participants that come are going to look at these. We're going to have these posted on larger 30 by 40 pieces of paper once we've had a chance to revise it based on any comments you may have tonight. That's what we were talking about with the printer, having time to get the printer and let us print those. And we want to put those up so that people can see them around the room. And the idea is we're going to start with about 8 tables, but we'll see how many people show up. We may narrow it down. But the point is we want to get at least people focused, either whether it's one group or 2 groups focused on each one of these. So you may have a group that's focused on, preserving Whitewater Township's rural character. That's the planning principle that group, you may have 12 people sitting at a table together at that group with a moderator that are going to look at these. They're going to kind of go through and decide yes, no, maybe we edit it, maybe we missed a priority. And then the other thing we're going to have them do is kind of give us an idea of sort of like a ranking of where they think these things belong. What if you could tackle any of these, which ones would you tackle first? And try to give some idea as to back to you as far as where we think they're going to fall in the community's priorities. The hope coming out of that session is that we're going to come back to you with a revised list, kind of where the community has given input to rank some of these things, and then have the ROS and the Planning Commission decide ultimately what things we're going to put in what order, and do we kind of like how the feedback here and everything that we got, and try to straighten it out so what you come away with is some ranked goals and objectives that are going to go into your next master plan based on all of this feedback that we've been collecting this entire time from the survey, the open house, the goal setting session we're about to walk into, and giving people as many opportunities as possible to weigh in so that you can keep kind of moving forward with your priorities in the master plan. Like I said, Randy's going to go through these a little bit more in a second. But before that, I'm just going to walk through the format a little bit for the evening. Basically what the idea is, people show up, there'll be a welcome table, a sign-in area just like we had before. But it's not going to be the freestyle walk through at your own pace. This is going to be a guided session. So people are going to come in. I'd like to get people into groups of about a dozen or so, if we can, sitting at different tables. If we get 80 people showing up, that's going to be a lot of tables. If we get 40 people that show up, that's fewer tables. It's 4 tables, right? About 10 at each. However many people show up, we want to try to split them into those groups. We'll be prepared with about 8 tables around the room. I think there's 11 tables in there when I counted last time I was over there, unless they have any more that I didn't see at the elementary school. And we want to set those up around the room, each table kind of situated near whichever principle they're going to ultimately work on. And we're going to kick the thing off. I'm going to give a presentation. And throughout that presentation, I'm going to go through several different things. I kind of outlined it. I think this might have been an additional attachment that was not in your packet, but was probably emailed out to you. that basically, well, it summarizes what we learned from the open house. But on the third page, I think in here, it starts to talk about the outline for how the session's gonna go. So basically, we're gonna kick things off with a presentation. I'm gonna talk about, what a master plan is, why we're doing this, give a little bit of background, including some maps, which I should mention, I am planning on bringing the zoning maps back with me we had last time and set those up around the room so people can see all your zoning districts and where everything is at. Some of the demographics and all that, and then talk a little bit about planning enabling requirements and some of the statutory stuff. And then kind of give them an idea, walking through a timeline of all the things that have happened up to now, as far as receiving public input, what point we're at in the steps, and what's going to happen tonight. And then I'm going to kind of go through an explanation of what we're expecting to do. Now, I just explained it a little bit to you, but essentially I'm going to have people around the rooms at those different tables with moderators at each table. If we don't have enough moderators, and I am planning on bringing another person from Leah with me, Matt Cowell will be joining, Randy's going to be there as well. We want to kind of situate it so that we can focus our attention, swivel around, and kind of answer questions in each group. In each group, I'm going to have one person, a participant designated kind of as that group champion or speaker, if you will. And what their role is going to be is to kind of, as people are discussing these different items that we're going through for the different goals, they're kind of going to help the moderators a little bit to moderate that session, because we can't be everywhere all at once, but we'll keep bouncing around the room. And then also to maybe make edits. So I want to have I've got these really big Post-it notes is what they look like, basically, where you can write out, your thoughts. You can kind of say, no, we missed some of these goals. We don't think we captured everything. I'm going to have them write it down, that group champion there. And then if they run out of room, they literally are Post-it notes. You can tear them off and just stick them on the wall and keep going if you want to. And the idea behind all of this is once we kind of narrow it down and get each group focused on individual topics around the room, we'll come back together after a break, and then we're going to do presentations from each one of those groups. But before everybody gets started with that, I will explain the exercise. I've got some information in my presentation that says it talks about what SMART goals are, why we're going to be using that method. I'm going to talk a little bit. I also have some slides on conduct during the meeting, being respectful, taking turns, that sort of thing. Just so that we kind of have that in place to give a little bit of guidance. Once all that's done, though, take a little break, come back, and then we're going to have that group champion kind of be the one that's going to stand up for each group and explain, we went through all these goals, we made some edits, we made some changes, we added a few, we think a few should be taken away, and explain why they feel that way to the rest of the group, why they came to that conclusion on some of those. And this will end up being a little bit of a moderated discussion. We can take some feedback from other tables and groups and ask questions. But at the end of it, we'll have gone through all 4 of those different planning principles that around the room. We'll now have an idea of why they put them in the order they did, why they added what they did, why they took away what they did, all of those things, so that we can then bring all of that information back to this group and say, here's where people's priorities are at. Here's what they thought of these goals and objectives, what they did and didn't like about what we kind of started for them, which is what this is, and give you some idea as to start forming and narrowing it down finally to what are your goals and objectives you're going to put into your master plan. Does that make sense? I know I just talked a lot. I didn't take a break to take questions. So I want to kind of get through that, but are there any questions?
I have a question. So how is it that you're gonna get a group leader, note taker identified for the groups quickly?
Well, I am hoping there will be a volunteer at the table. I'd like to get somebody who is willing to And I'll explain what that role is at the end of the presentation as I'm explaining the exercise. I need one person who's willing that can write vertically, and take some notes and cross some things off and be willing to take on that role. They have a little bit more of a responsibility than some of the other folks, but it's important that we have somebody there in case, say, I get called away over to a table next to me for a minute to go answer a question. We still have someone there to kind of help keep it on track, keep taking notes, and then I can bounce back over if it starts to get out of control or whatever we need to do.
So one of my questions on that, and I read through all of this stuff that you had, and I had some observations where it appeared as though there were definitely some strong personalities on some of these sticky notes that I was reading. It was really bit of aggressive language on some of them. And I was just wondering how it's really important when you're doing something like this, that all the voices that are at the table are heard. And so I didn't know if some of the ROS people were gonna be there and maybe volunteer to be a note taker, because it always worries me if somebody tries to take over the table, if there's like a coup at the table,
Right.
because that can happen.
We want to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, we want to. So I'm just wondering, is there a strategy to prevent that? Because that always concerns me.
I think it's a good point Linda had. What about if like one of you guys appoint the person to the table? Would that do it, Linda?
Well, I thought, weren't we gonna have some of us sitting at those tables too?
We
Yeah.
want this distributed. We want planning commission members and ROS members at
So
the
there'll be one
tables
of us.
and evenly distributed so that
Okay.
we can,
It's
we
just
can-
really important that they
is.
understand, like, as far as my experience facilitating stuff is that my opinion is just really kind of focus on getting the input from everybody.
Yeah,
You can't have one of those personalities standing up there talking all the time.
Yeah.
Putting all their thoughts on the notes.
absolutely. And I would like to have a planning commissioner or ROS person at each table if we can
Yeah.
spread out a little bit.
For
And then
sure.
that way, if I'm sitting at a table helping out for a minute, and say Keith's behind me at a table and he says, hey, Barry, I need you for a second. We got questions over here. Someone's kind of starting to take control.
Yeah.
That we can bounce back and forth a little bit, but you're absolutely right. That does happen sometimes. You do sometimes get people who are very passionate about something, which is good. We want the feedback, but we don't want it at the expense of others being heard.
Well, the other thing is, we all have biases. We would be best served ourselves if we sit at the table that we care the least about. Because some of us have strong personalities. I mean, seriously, I
Yeah.
would try for myself to choose the thing that I care the least about. Just because I think it makes a better facilitator. Just because you don't start injecting your. Or taking.
Yep. Yeah, it's
People should think about that when they choose your spot.
I think as our spot too is we're not gonna be injecting. We're not there to inject.
I
We're
know,
there just to
that's
help
true.
them inject.
We all have
Yeah.
to realize.
we want to make sure
Yeah,
everyone's
if-
participating too, and it's not dominated by one or two people.
And I think that's a good point that Linda brought up too, and Keith, that on the last one, I think you guys made it clear to us that you're not here to inject your opinion. You're here just to help and listen. And I think if we did that, if we went back to that, is that we're here to listen, and if we're asked a question, we haven't the answer to it, I guess we should answer it, of course. But we're there to listen and, like you said, try to keep things on track.
And make sure
So-
everyone's participating and it's
Yeah.
not just one or two voices that you're
Yeah.
hearing and the whole rest of the group's silent.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. That is something that is in that the facilitator presentation at the very end before we transition into the group activities is, about being respectful, allowing others to speak. Each person gets a turn. There's kind of a list of things, and I'm gonna have smaller printouts I can just leave with you at the tables too. And I kind of wanted to put one, I thought about putting one on a 30 by 40 and just sticking it right up there in the front of the room so that people remember, because you're absolutely right, that does happen. Sometimes people will want to keep going and going, and we need to be fair and get around the group. Yep.
So to start, what you was going to do is you was gonna kind of give a presentation first, and that would be part of your presentation as well.
Yeah, is
Yeah.
laying the ground rules
Yep,
for that
perfect,
discussion.
Perfect.
Yes.
I think that,
Yep, exactly. I'm gonna walk through what the purposes of it, what the SMART goals are about everything being measurable and achievable and so on and so forth. And then talk kind of through the ground rules, I guess you could call it, for the night, things that we need to be mindful of and allow others to participate, be respectful, those types of things, take turns. And a little bit about the champions and what they're kind of gonna do at each table to help out. And if a champion ends up being someone from the RLS committee or something and you want to write, that's fine. I found that you get a little more buy-in if you do have a volunteer, that kind of runs it a little bit and does some of that writing. Because at the end, I want them to stand up and be able to talk about, what that group said. And you'll be amazed, some people are really great at doing it. And sometimes if they miss it, someone in the group is a little more comfortable because, it's another resident just like them. They'll kind of, oh, we forgot this, on that point and make sure that it gets heard.
I think that should be a last resort, with one of us being that person.
I think, yeah, if you end up writing, or something, that's fine. It's better, I think, to let the resident someone do a presentation.
Two people in each group, one leader at the table and the other person.
Well,
Which one of those is making the presentation?
I was suggesting that's all the same person, kind of the group leader, but it could be one of you from the ROS doing the writing or helping. I mean, you're definitely gonna be helping moderating, but doing the writing or something is fine. The key thing is, I think that we just want to have buy-in from the people at the table that are giving all the input, to have some ownership to come up and kind of talk through all the points.
And are people randomly assigned to the groups or do people choose the group they want to be in?
Well, that is always a tough one. So I always find there's a topic that it seems to be a lot of people want to gravitate towards, and some other one that maybe not as many people want to gravitate towards. I think the easiest, hopefully, we can get people to volunteer, and I'll kind of explain, we want to limit kind of how many people are at each table. But that's why that second half is so important. When you get somebody that's standing there and going through and talking about, maybe they hit on affordable housing or something in theirs, and you get somebody over in the group that was talking about parks that wanted to say something about that, but they, weren't in that group because there were already too many people in that group. Now they have a chance to raise their hand and give their input quickly on something like that. It's not perfect. Some points will be missed, but it with a 2-hour time frame,
I did have one question, to get everybody's involvement. Could it be such a thing that at the table you could say, okay, everybody would like to have everybody would have at least 3 minutes. And if everybody had a time to go around, if somebody was maybe wanting to take over or bashful or whatever during their time period, they could say, no, I'm fine, or that should include everybody.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, and as
They could have talk more, but that would make sure everybody certainly has an opportunity.
I suppose when I've been a moderator, you notice pretty quickly, like who's not speaking and who's speaking a lot.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked at it as my role, like as a moderator, to step in once in a while and go, and what about you? We haven't heard from you yet tonight. What do you think about this? And just kind of pull them in there. And sometimes they're quiet and they'll just say, oh, I'm fine.
Yep,
And that's okay. But maybe that's their chance then to interject a little bit. Yeah, if you've got 12 people around, you tend to kind of notice who isn't saying anything and who is. That's why I don't want a group of like 30 people at a table, because you can't keep track of everybody at that point.
I do think the groups are somewhat controlled by the number of people in each group too. I mean, we can't have 30 at one table and 5 at another. We've got, we're trying to break this up so that people are going to be somewhat forced to go into the categories. We keep them, once you get beyond 12 in a group, it's pretty much hard to manage conversations, and it's hard to, so.
Now, I will say, let's just to keep numbers simple, say you have 50 people that show up and you have 4 groups, right? Well, we could have some groups that are just a little bigger, 13 people are in it or something. Or maybe you have like 20 people who want to talk about the preserve Whitewater Township's rural character. Well, maybe at that point you say, let's have 2 groups of 10 work on that one, and then the other 3 will just have 10 people. We can split it up like that too if we have a lot of participants. I try to keep it a little bit flexible because it's not an RSVP situation, so we know it could be 80 people show up, it could be 40 people show up, it could be 100. I have no idea until the night of. But I'm making a guess as to how many people will show up based on how many people have shown up already to the open house. Typically the number of people that show up to these and stay through the whole thing is lower than what you're going to see at the open house. Usually, not always, but usually. So that's kind of the procedure we're going through. Any other questions on that?
I can just say that every time I've been involved in these things, they're always exceed expectations. And in terms of, they're just like the last one did, there's generally a lot of people willing to share their thoughts and the conversation is good. And we just need to get them started with some goals, and we'll talk about that in a moment if you're ready.
We'll start going through goals.
Okay, so the ROS committee has met once in October there. We started tackling this work and we have some members here with us. And also thanks to Denise for getting flyers out to everybody about this workshop and distributing that and posting it in different places and so forth. And Tom putting the signs up and moving them around and getting the word out as best we can.
Every quarter I go to, I see.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the email blast Lois did, right? That's been out, right?
Ardella.
And corrected out. Yeah, that date was cursed from the very beginning, wasn't it? Yeah, it turns like first it said Thursday instead of Tuesday, and fortunately it didn't go out yet. Otherwise that could have been ugly, but it wasn't. So thank you guys, Tom, for checking that, and a lot of eyes going over it. But so the ROS committee at their meeting earlier in October had a conversation about the very beginnings of this. We had a draft of this. I think this is version 3 now, where we prepared this, had talked about this, got some feedback, and then I think that meeting was the first time they'd seen it. And then there were comments and emails afterwards. So what we came up with was the whole notion of trying to keep true to the 2015 master plan, which has goals and goals in it. But if you look at it, the goals are really general statements about kind of we wish things were this way or that way. And so as we looked at that, we really started to conclude that what we're really talking about is planning principles. And there are really 4 of them. So that's really where it comes from. If you look back to the 2015 master plan, these are the major goals that were identified back then. And for the most part, nothing in the survey or the open house or any of the conversations that we've had suggests that these really aren't still applicable. So in recognizing that planning is a process, it's not just a one and done thing. We took those goals, called them principles, and then defined some context around it. In other words, some meaning is, well, what do these things mean? So I'm going to walk through them all so that we're not surprised at the meeting next week. But the first planning principle was to respect the rights of township residents and property owners. And kind of expanded that to point out that no one's really served when we have poor regulations that create confusion, delays, and challenges. The lack of consistent enforcement is also problematic. We've got blighted areas in Whitewater Township that was identified. There's cases where existing permitted and special uses in districts that we know of now create potential conflicts. Right now, we allow residential uses in our industrial zone, which doesn't make a lot of sense. We also have concerns about landscaping requirements in the zoning ordinance, whether that's really effective or not. So from that, 5 potential goals emerged. And again, we tried to follow the SMART principles of what a goal should be, in terms of being, remember this, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So in other words, putting some meaning to behind these goals. I mean, it's nice to say we're going to preserve preserve rural character, but what does that mean? How are we going to do it? So the 5 goals here, 6 goals include having a well-organized, effective zoning ordinance. That work's underway right now, and it's mentioned here that we're going to improve the clarity of the ordinance so that requirements and standards are unambiguous. We want to address blight in Whitewater Township. There's a junk ordinance now in place, and there may be other related ordinances that could be updated to be more effective. We want to reduce future land use conflicts in Whitewater Township. Again, this ordinance is cumulative in a sense that we allow residential uses in industrial, which doesn't make a lot of sense. The landscaping and buffering requirements are not what they should be. We want to have and maintain effective regulations on higher density residential development. There's a place for that in the township. I'm not sure our zoning ordinance gets us there. And then the issue about alternative energy facilities, our ordinance is largely silent on that. We don't have anything to deal with solar or wind, and we know those kind of facilities are coming. We see it in Acme Township. So we need to be proactive on that. And all those kind of fall under the umbrella of the rights of township residents and property owners. Some of these could go potentially bleed over to other categories, but not in every case. The second one is preserving Whitewater Township's rural character, and that's been talked about a lot in the township. But again, it's not, there's no real action steps. There's no real specific goals to accompany that. We know it's important to the residents. They told us that in the survey, and they told us that again in the open house. Part of that includes preserving the environmental integrity of the floodplains, wetlands, watersheds, and water bodies. Currently, land east of Cook Road is zoned agricultural. I can see in the future there'd be pressure to change that to commercial, given the traffic volumes we have on there. And then secondly, or fourthly, there's support for agricultural tourism as a broad category of land uses. So our potential goals include 8 of them. The first has to do with the regulatory tools to help maintain rural character, and this splits into 2 different areas. The first of which is talking about density. I'm not sure we want to get into a real deep dive in density. We know that the current minimum lot size in the agricultural area is about 1 acre, just a little less. There's some support for something larger than that. Then also, as Gary pointed out, there's also stringent requirements we can have stringent requirements on landscape design, such as a more creative home placement, trying to preserve natural vegetation, things of that nature to preserve elements of the rural character. That might be, again, native vegetation protection, native planting, visual blocks, trying to push homes back so you don't see them from the road so much. Again, maintain the rural qualities of M72 east of Cook Road. I would expect pressure to see that changed in the future, whether it's next year or 10 years from now, I don't know. Create an improved PUD zoning district that developers are inclined to use. A PUD is an optional development approach. Developers have to agree to request that. I'm not sure our PUD ordinance accomplishes that for us, in that developers may not want to do it. It may not be worth the fuss. Review and update zoning requirements to further agricultural tourism. We know the roadside stands, farm stands, U-pick operations are important to people. Again, I think our zoning ordinance needs to be fixed in order to make that more possible in some places. We had the special use not so long ago about Merton and mods just up the road. And I think there were some existing ordinance areas that were difficult. We saw from the last workshop that there was some interest in architectural design standards. Those could be either mandatory or voluntary. That would include describing some agricultural feeling kind of buildings, as opposed to seeing Dollar Generals with cinder block facades. Some steps that require them to consider a more agricultural looking building that we have. We have number 6, the R1 zoning district along our creeks and tributaries, which seems like a pretty strange element if you're trying to preserve rural character. Why do we want to have higher density development along more sensitive areas that are subject to flooding or wetlands?
So what you were saying just prior to that is that we could see the first Dollar General that looks like a barn?
Well, there's things that you can,
That's what you're saying, though, right?
Well,
Having some kind of like
yeah, I
tailored
wouldn't.
as the Alpine look. We would have like some, whatever the agricultural look would be.
Well, you might require things like multiple exterior materials. You might give some examples of what, typical chain kind of stores would have many different designs for their stores. You've seen Tractor Supplies, you've seen a lot of different facilities that have different facades. You can make the facade look like it belongs in the area rather than a concrete box stuck there with a pole sign in the front and things of that nature. I mean, whether or not the township has an appetite for that is something to be explored.
When you're talking about this, are you just talking about commercial buildings or are you talking about housing too?
Commercial.
Because I can tell you in the past, when this was tried to push and they tried to push it onto residential buildings too, it was a major uproar. The community did not want that.
Maybe that should be clarified.
Yeah, it doesn't say that.
Industrial, yeah,
Industrial, commercial.
yeah, industrial,
Mhm.
commercial. I know in a lot of towns, like Charlotte, for instance, and some of them, like the McDonald's signs and things like that, they're a certain size and they have to be down to the ground. So there are things that make it look much better.
Yep.
And I've seen, in North Carolina, there was a place where like the Walmart signs and things, they had a lot of the trees and those signs were even smaller. So they made their signs, the signage, so it looked nicer. So that could be an option as well.
You're just gonna
Yeah,
add in there
add commercial.
industrial and.
Yes,
Covered.
I think the examples in the workshop were all commercial for the most
Yeah.
part.
In the proposal, right.
Yeah,
I just wanted to clarify that.
yeah, I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I'm glad you said, if I could, real quick, I'm glad you brought that up. And they were mostly pictures of commercial and industrial buildings, but there were some multifamily like apartment buildings that were pictured up there too. I think we kind of knew going into that there was definitely not support to do that to like individual homes, which is why we picked the other uses. So would apartment buildings or complexes, say you get a 100-unit apartment building coming in, is that something you would want to consider for design standards or?
I think so.
I
I
do
think so too,
Yeah.
because what's a great example of this is it's been going on for probably more than 30 years now, all the jokes about the Grand Traverse Resort Tower, and a lot of people feel it's an eyesore. And that it doesn't fit. It's got a great view when you go up in the tower, but like that's an example of like, I've heard a lot of people say for years, it's too bad that wasn't done in one spot.
Yes, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Like,
That's an
when I went
example.
up as a kid, I thought that was a big deal.
It was,
If any of you get out and see them on it, and see the new house that's going in there.
I was thinking about that.
Salons in the middle of the city. Everything looks like a car dealership.
or maybe just.
It's an
Absolutely.
industrial
Excluding-
design.
excluding single family residential.
And you got a lot of big log homes.
That was like before,
You got this great big commercial building, but they didn't have any way of. No, they didn't have any ordinance to say what it could be, so.
You can always hope it'll
Yep.
sink into the lake.
Everybody has different tastes.
Yeah, I mean, and the guy had a lot of money.
Obviously,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're fighting a conundrum here. We just had. Mr. McKenna come in and tell us that we're losing population. Well, we have to close the school. But we want the schools, but we don't want. Denser housing to create housing where we have more young families. So
I didn't hear anyone say we don't want that.
It's, they want to reserve the commercial, country setting. And so they don't want dense housing, which means you're not paying low cost housing, young families or children. Coming in, they're going away. So I don't know.
What, I haven't heard anybody say that like you said, Randy, but this push towards larger acreage and agricultural. A lot of small families don't want to start out on a 5-acre chunk. They just want to have a home. And there is, I don't know where it came from, but there does seem to be this push in that direction. And for help, to help the small family thing and to help keep the farmers. I mean, the reason we look rural is because of the farmers.
Right.
If we take that single acre saleage away from the farmers, we're not helping.
Okay.
Well, and the way prices are going up, kind of, how can they afford that?
Right.
I mean, you see what you pay for 5 acres, it's ridiculous.
Right, how can a young family,
Yeah,
just on a regular job, buy a piece of land and build a house?
Yeah.
When you have to start out on 5 acres. So
Yeah,
Carl does have a
exactly.
point.
Yeah, he's right.
Oh, I don't disagree.
I kind of think in that, our district, it ought to be a 5-acre. Maybe something a little less, but if you don't, you can end up with the whole subdivisions. Guys sells off the whole farm. Somebody, if it's in a subdivision, which is legal, which helps in some respects, with the school and jobs. But it's exactly the opposite of remaining rural quality, so.
but go to
Okay.
Paradise Ranch in Kingsley. Have you been to Paradise Ranch in Kingsley?
What?
Paradise Ranch in
No.
Kingsley? There's like 79 lots there, all between 2 and 3 acre lots. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
But you don't have to look any further than just south of here in Millbrook.
Right.
What you have is high density development, pretty much. I mean, you've got mostly duplexes in there, I think.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And yet you drive up Williamsburg Road and you generally don't
there.
see them. They're in there. It's tastefully done. It's well, landscaped. You've got, so density is not the only equation in that factor.
Right. It's how it's designed.
It's design. And so that's what we were trying to get to in the first goal there, 1 and 2, that they're both related, but you've got to look at both. You've got to look at,
How to combine.
and so how do you get developers to do more Millbrooks and less of other types of development that are 1 acre subdivisions?
Yep, and I think if we try to manage that through zoning, just like that Millbrook. Maybe try to adapt some things that will fit into that.
So that's the conversation we need for
Yep.
November
Right.
7th.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we kind of jumped around a little bit,
I think we were on 6.
Okay. Number 6. So again, we have this problem with zoning districts that is a mistake. The road plan, there is one that is online. There it does relate to the natural beauty roads that the road commission has that needs to be updated in order to get the protections that you can have for a designation of a natural beauty road.
We just went through that. CBA, 6 months ago, on Supply Road, the owner wanted to get a variance to put his garage in a pole barn, like 70 or 80 feet away from the road, and that district says, it's supposed to be 150 feet. And we said, no, we didn't know. It's the only one in the township that says 150 feet, and nobody really knows why.
Right.
That's what it is. And I said, look, I can't change the ordinance, and this man, his property had room to put that pole on 150 feet back. It wasn't, there was a hardship. That's what he wanted to do. And then we had this. So why do we have that 150 feet? We don't know.
We don't know
can't
why.
Change that.
Right.
So we said, no,
He moved it and it looks good.
Yeah.
He moved it back and he looks good. It's up and it looks good. He put the barn up.
Yeah.
It looks good.
He was able to, find a way to do it
Mhm.
without, violating that, 150 foot.
Okay.
Yeah, and, you know, so you're not gonna see more, maybe more people want.
No,
something like
no, we're
that.
talking, no, I didn't say zoning, did I?
Well.
No, I didn't.
if
So,
you wanted to see building, that's why they want to consider.
no, it doesn't, this isn't really anything to do with zoning right now. We're talking about improvements in the right of way, whether, what the road commission can do or not do in the right of way. In the right of way. That's what that covers. I mean, I know what you're saying about the other material there, and that needs to be looked at as well. So number 8 has to do with repeal of Article 27, which apparently that was just repealed and not replaced with anything. So that had to do with environmentally sensitive areas, wetlands, steep shorelines. I've looked at that. I don't know that that's the best ordinance in the world, but I think there's some things to look at for reinstatement.
Is that enough information to make it clear to people what they're talking about? Like, I'm not real clear, just reading that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not in the ordinance now because it was repealed.
And that was brought up at the,
Actually, one of the ROS members, Reen Stratton, brought that up and said when she was looking through the ordinances that Article 27 was repealed. And she asked why, and I said, I don't know. It was like 2019, I think, when it was repealed. So we don't have any special requirements for steep slope development or along shorelines. Pardon me?
There's
It-
shoreline restrictions for any lakefront owners, yes. You have to get a DEQ permit to touch anything.
So what we're calling for is a reevaluation of that.
do you think this is the appropriate place for that?
Well, if you want to try to preserve rural character and you're developing on steep slopes and wetlands and shorelines, those
That
all
is in-
contribute
moves
to
in. Okay.
Yeah,
rural
you could
character.
ask the people on the south end of Torch Lake about that. They have a big problem. And they instituted a bunch of rules as a result. They had a huge erosion problem.
So building a sense of community was the third one. You know, we like many rural townships, we don't have a downtown or a sense of place, really. We did. It's interesting from the history that there was a lot of commercial activity here, but most of the buildings are gone for the most part. There were hardware stores and whatnot. You can read all about that. 3 out of 4 residents survey responses want to encourage redevelopment of Williamsburg north of 72 in a downtown type setting with small scale retail, commercial services, restaurants. I think they're pretty specific about what they would like to see. I'm not sure the zoning accomplishes that, but we'll get to that in a moment. Most of everything south of 72 is residential, except for the town hall and the church. We don't really have any places for social or cultural activities and interactions for farmers markets, car shows, concerts, senior programs, except for the park. So there's really no public space like you would have in a downtown. Areas west of Elk Lake Road and north of M72 is Zone V for village. That's its own designation. And then also number 5, residents point to the need for more convenient bike trails and walking paths that would help build more of a sense of community if people are out of their cars and walking and biking. So we have 7 goals here. One is to evaluate the permitted uses and development standards in the V district, north of 72 and east of Elk Lake Road, to make sure that that aligns with the concept of a downtown type setting and small scale retail. We might need to go to the step of having some land use sketches to show building mass and placement and parking lot locations to be able to more clearly define what it is we're shooting for before we would write up any amendments. We should, number 2, pursue opportunities for a corridor plan along M72 with the newly created MPO. You heard a presentation last month from the new MPO director. There is potential funding with that. That corridor plan would identify locations for potential signalization, roundabouts, if there's, as that area develops. You know, it's helpful to have a plan of how traffic accesses so that we don't have the kind of mess you do south of Traverse City. We can avoid that here, I think, with a good transportation or corridor plan. We delicately worded number 3 about encouraging investigation and discovering feasible solutions for water and sewer options. If there's going to be any more intensive development in the Williamsburg area, it likely needs to be supported with water and sewer. Obviously, that's costs, and that's their potential for other things as far as getting that service. A lot of study needs to go into that in terms of costs for capital improvements and rates and so forth.
Hey, Randy, if a community decided to do something like that for development, are there grants? Because Whitewater Township can never afford to put in,
Right.
sure, but there are grants that you could.
There are
apply.
grants and loans,
Okay.
long-term loans. Who, rural development offices, you know, there's the whole science to defining what those capital costs are. And then I don't know if there's any possibility of extending services from the casino out this way. I don't know what they have, don't have. I'm sure there's some of this touched on in that study that the township board did with CM2. Yeah. And they touch on a few things with possibilities, but that's very preliminary.
Yeah.
And I think it's still labeled as draft as well, but anyway, so I think you need to continue investigating that. The non-motorized plan for the township to help define where walking trails and bike trails might go and develop a long list of projects that could also be done in conjunction with the MPO, because there is special funding available for non-motorized transportation. But we've got to identify projects first. I was surprised in the survey how much support that got from residents. And they want to see.
People are forced to walk on the shoulder of our
Yeah.
roads, which is not very.
That's right. That's right.
They want to exercise, but they don't have really a way to do it conveniently.
Number 5 is create a community development foundation or link up with an existing one. There is no entity locally that I know of or that I've heard about that really would potentially be a entity that could help fund projects privately through private donations. If you were a resident and wanted to donate money to your community for some improvements to a park, to any worthwhile endeavor, you could obviously donate it directly to the township or potentially a community foundation kind of entity. I think Denise had brought that up, that there isn't that mechanism in place. Number 6 was written before tonight's presentation, so it's rather general about partnerships with Elk Rapids School District. I see a lot of possibilities there, obviously with how this community develops impacts the schools and vice versa. So a lot more cooperation with them. I mean, as the township grows too, there's likely demands for, libraries, senior centers, related public space needs. So maybe there's opportunities to partner with the schools and different things. And then also number 7, just have more partnerships with the MEDC and maybe other economic development agencies for development or redevelopment of areas north of 72. There are grant funds, tax abatements, different mechanisms that can be put in place to stimulate development. So all this relates to building a sense of community.
For the village,
Yeah,
Oh, you're right.
that's correct.
You're right. It is.
So should you put those 2 items closer together? Because at first I thought you had the same issue twice, but then I had to read it again. I just wonder, does it help to put them together or do you want them separate?
Yes. No, I think putting them together would make sense.
Is it already on the list, Denise, here somewhere?
Yeah, it's number 5 on the first one. Effective regulations on higher density residential development.
It's under respect the rights of the township.
That's where you can.
I could see that being under build a sense of community too, in terms of the village district.
Yeah, you might get different feedback on it if you put it.
Speak a little about that. You're right. So I've heard a little bit about higher density housing. We didn't focus much on the location of it when this was being developed. But there is a map from the open house. If you go through where we asked people to put the dots as to where they did and did not want to see some of that housing. So that question was kind of posed already as to about where they want to see it. And where they definitely don't. And so I think what this was getting at was more just the regulations that might be associated with that type of development, if I have that right.
Yeah,
I think it'll get more into the nuts and bolts, but since you kind of have an idea now of where people are generally supportive and not supportive of putting those types of developments, now it's the question becomes how you're gonna regulate it. I don't know if it would be in the B district or if it'd be in the U district, it doesn't exist yet, I have no idea.
yeah, it's sort of, it's a little nebulous there, but I think it's important though, because that's really where most of the demand for new housing is. It's in the, what they call missing middle housing, where it's not detached single family housing. It's something denser than that, but short of a big complex. Okay. So the last principle in the 2015 master plan was encourage economic opportunities. So Whitewater Township already has an industrial area. It's generally south of M72. That should be M72, not MN72. And east of Moore Road, it's home to some industrial uses that provide jobs and tax base. A lot of townships don't have that. For the M72 corridor west of Cook Road, there's opportunities for new commercial development. Residents told us they generally want to see smaller footprints, 75,000 square feet or less, mixed uses, potentially retail service, controlled signage, limited driveways, limited lighting, and extensive landscaping. So our goals, there are 7 of them here, include pursuing designation as a redevelopment ready community by the MEDC. That may not be completely achievable, but there's a lot of good principles in there about having your act together as far as being able to signal to developers that you are you have a solid master plan, a good zoning ordinance, a clear process for permitting, and it's essentially a way of taking the confusion out of land development. There's a certification that you get at the end of that process. It's something positive to work at. Updating the commercial zoning district. Again, similar to other places, reviewing permitted uses, development standards, and potential zoning update to align with the community survey results. And potentially they're adding the architectural design guidelines if desired, either in a mandatory or a voluntary way. Secondly, or thirdly, updating the N district, which is industrial. Again, the same thing we have. I'm not sure the permitted uses in there aligned to a good industrial zone. You've got residences permitted in there and commercial. mean, if you're looking to put a new or expand a new industrial operation, you don't want to know that there could be homes next to you that can potentially be concerned about lighting and trucks and normal industrial operations. Develop a consensus about the desirability of voluntary or mandatory design guidelines. Again, we talked about that here, but local preferences towards an architectural style. You know, you can go from just very basic things all the way up to very elaborate. I have no idea where we'd end up pursuing that, but it's clearly something that there's some interest in. You can do some very basic things to prevent crazy things from happening. Fluorescent buildings, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. But anyway, short-term rentals in the town, the survey gave us some feedback on that. It was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 leave it alone, 1/3 prohibit it, and 1/3 regulate it. So there's clearly some work to do in terms of getting closure on that. The ordinance language is basically silent on short-term rentals, but the township's position is they're not permitted. There is the number 6, the rail line that we have that comes in just west of the, or just east of the casino that ends up in Old 72 and crosses there. The status of that's not clear, but there have been examples of rail bikes on the west side of Traverse City. There's maybe the possibility of that being a rail trail at some point. There's lots of different possibilities for that. That line actually runs in behind the casino and then connects over at Acme. So there's a lot of conversation to be had about that, but we need to. I'm not real sure. There's the line
Where
that
does it end on
crosses.
this end?
Yeah.
Oh, just by 72.
Yeah,
By
Well,
Elk
just
Lake
before
Road,
Elk Lake Road.
just before, yeah.
It ends basically behind the cemetery up there.
Okay.
The last, Morrison's used to have a storage building just east of the post office. And they used to ship food out of there to the rail, but the railroad, in my knowledge, the railroad has not brought a train down in this far in years, decades. Bates Road is where they stop now at the lumber. It comes this side of the casino. It doesn't end at the casino. It comes clear past the casino.
I know where it is.
West end.
Where's the west end? I know where it is.
The west,
It doesn't end. It
that west end
continues
doesn't
on.
end. It connects to the train.
Goes all the way
system.
down to Ann Arbor now.
Yeah, it doesn't end. Yeah, Ann Arbor, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I think the rail company would still have rights to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they do, but
I think the state owns it and it's.
But you
leased
could
to the-
probably, because they're not using them and they're abandoned. You know, like you said, I think they stopped, don't they, Mike, at the casino, the train tracks? the
Stop
actual
at Wimsat or the
Well,
lumber company there.
that's where the train stops. The
Right.
train really doesn't come past there anymore.
Yeah,
But the tracks actually come all the way to behind the post office.
okay, okay.
I think they come all the way to Elk Lake Road, just
Okay.
a couple hundred yards from Elk Lake Road,
Okay.
but they come up in behind the post office. But like I say, that last 3 or 4 miles, they haven't used in decades, and it probably is in deep repair, need of repair.
Well, why would it? Why it come from the casino to Williams? There's nothing there but the post office. Yeah.
it could. I mean, I guess you've got the right of way there. There's a potential to do
We're talking,
something.
You know, years before that'll ever be developed, so planning ahead with that's not a bad idea because. I mean, they
So-
have the rail cars for this whole thing, they've had them for years.
So the question before the planning commission is, what does our zoning ordinance allow for now? And is that in line with the vision for that area?
Yeah.
I would hate to see something required out there that is contrary to what you want that area to develop like. I mean, you already tell residents, property owners there what you can do with that property, right? Read the zoning district. Does that match with what we hope to see there? I don't know. So the last one is then invest in township facilities as development catalysts. It seems like there's an opportunity to co-locate facilities, especially we talk about the school district and how they're looking at their facilities and, with the township growing and it's just kind of a general statement. It's really more of a policy of keeping that communication open. I don't know if there's need for additional library space or is there a need for public safety space. There's lots of different things as communities grow and change. There's needs for public space. So this is not the final. I mean, this is really the starting point to bring the residents into a conversation about what needs to be done and how we can put some meat on the bones here of these
That's great.
goals. So
Nice job.
is this close enough to?
I think so.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna try to.
We're pressed for time, and that's why I said we had, normally there's another way I can do this too, where I give people more of a chance to actually develop these, but you just don't have the time to do that, so I wanted to. Yeah, it's a lot to talk about.
That was a great start though. Looks good.
Mhm. Is there anything else for zoning project updates?
You mean,
Anything
Let's
else
see,
related to
update
the
is,
master plan?
review the master plan. Workshop, let me see, zoning project, okay, the next one was define substantial change.
I just got one more question.
Okay.
Do we want to set up a ROS meeting sometime after this? And how soon can you have the results? I'm guessing you're gonna probably have it done before hunting season, because are you a hunter or? Okay. Is there anybody on our ROS that is?
Well, I am for one, and
Is there a
guess.
suggestion on a date?
Except
Suggestion on a date then?
when is the,
So this,
well, the planning commission will meet again on December 6th
right,
as well. So if we could do the 4th or the 5th,
of December?
Yeah.
I will not be here.
that'd be good. That's all right.
For me, it's gonna have to be before the 30th.
Before the 30th, okay.
Or
We'll
the
do
30th.
the 29th then.
Yep, do that.
28th.
I think Keith said you was okay the 30th.
He's not.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The 29th.
What about the 28th? I can do that. All right. 28th, that's 7 a.m. or 9 a.m. Or what time do we usually? What's that? No. He's not gonna be. Oh,
I thought he said he could meet on the 30th.
somebody said they could meet on the 30th. Two,
Green,
no,
did the 30th not work?
I'm okay with the 30th. Thirtieth good?
Yep.
Wait for confirmation. 30th is a good.
9 o'clock
Head
or
shaking.
Guys, phone, well,
9?
9 o'clock, all right. All right, I'll get that out. All right.
So
thank
at
you,
that, the
sorry.
purpose of that meeting is to then
Go over-
summarize all the
Yep,
results that we
get
have
this ready
from,
and finish this, give to the board. So sound all right?
that way be,
Randy, you and I will have had a chance to communicate a little bit about getting some of the make some revisions, get that sorted out a little bit before we bring it back to the ROS.
Yes. I think she can only make it the 30th. Is that correct? So 30th's gotta be it.
Gary, I'm confused by what you were talking about here as far as not. We're talking about meeting November 30th.
Right.
Right. Okay, so we have,
Before that,
right,
Okay,
All right,
okay.
thank you.
The next thing we had was a defined substantial change. No, what I had is, and this is just, what I was gonna do is just get everybody's opinion. My definition of a small change is just to shuffle the verbiage without affecting the outcome of the ordinance. And then a large change, I had eliminating, rewriting the ordinance that are incompatible with 2023 and the township needs and are in conflict with our master plan vision for the township. So that would be we had to label the two, that would be my difference in the two. And then Rachel had a form, I think there's 12 pages where as a guide to define the difference between a small and a large. And I think if we do that, we're going to spend a lot of time defining when there's really no need to it. I think we can just change what needs to be changed. And then remember, if the board rejects it, they'll send it back with what they don't like, and then we can fix it. Go ahead, Carl, go ahead.
A large change requires a public meeting.
Yep. Mhm.
So you can't do that.
Well, it wouldn't be adopted yet. It would be proposed. Everything we're doing is proposed.
It's all gonna be public when we're done.
I know, but
This is all proposed.
that's kind of rewriting the ordinance. It requires a public meeting and vote and then goes.
We will,
Yeah.
but first we gotta do it.
Well,
I think what we're talking about here, Carl, is
I don't think you should attack anything like that without the board telling us they want us to.
Some of these have to be attacked or we can't change, we can't.
I think what we're talking about is just dealing with the issues that Randy has brought up, that there's conflict. Okay, so we're not dealing with changing anything that there's not conflict there. So there's already a problem. All we're doing is fixing problems. And that's the only thing we're talking about right now. Just fixing the issues. And that will eventually have to go to public comment anyways.
And a major
Right.
change.
yes,
So we all understand.
Normal part of our business.
Yeah.
But I can look back where there are, and I'm sure Mike has it too, where, yeah, there's changes and they were rewritten and submitted to the board and they were rejected,
Mhm.
the board didn't ask for them in the first place.
Mhm.
And the commission went through and we did something that had absolutely no chance. So,
The-
you know, and changes, if there's a need and support for it, yes. But just go through and take something that's a little fuzzy and change it, really nobody.
Yeah,
wants us to.
I don't think we're doing that. This is mandatory because we're gonna have to get it in, back into compliance with the master plan. Some of this we have to do, but you gotta remember, when I say change, it isn't like we're going to change it and that's it. It has its process. The board can either accept it or reject it, but what I'm saying change is some of these things are in conflict. We gotta get rid of that conflict. And so what I'd like to do is get everybody else's thoughts and opinions on the difference between the two changes. Is there a difference?
A minor changes, I guess we need to define so that somebody does come and say that's a major change. Maybe that have a big meeting like that.
Yeah, no, that's the topic we're dealing with right now is what's a minor and what's a major
Yeah.
change.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we're discussing.
A major change.
I don't, and I don't think that, I think there's two issues here. And we're not talking about changing, we're talking about clarifying
Right,
and fixing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which is
changing
which.
comes later.
right.
Right.
Right now, we're
Okay.
just trying to decide which is which.
Exactly.
So right now, we're just talking about clarifying and fixing,
Yes.
right?
That would, I guess, would that be,
So there should be two different
if you
definitions.
change anything in it, like the verbiage, what you're saying is, yes, we gotta clarify it by taking this out or adding this in. But we're not changing it. What you're saying is we're just clarifying, it, fixing it.
Fixing the issue,
So,
if there's two different
Okay,
verbiages on it or whatever. And I think that if we just separate those issues, you know, we're not changing, I think. If we want to look at defining change, I think we're looking at defining change once this is over.
yep.
Right.
Mhm, yep.
So,
Once the master plan's done.
Yes.
But we've got to get it, first of all, so that the that our zoning ordinances will fit into the master.
And that's what we're dealing with Randy right
Yep,
so it was my understanding that Randy's contract said no substantial change, right? That was the commitment. And so, I think it looked to me like Rachel, she got us started by talking about, comparing what would be substantial versus what would be non-substantial. And I looked through all of Randy's notes and, I didn't like red circle anything that I thought was inappropriate. Like he had a lot of things that were just correcting a term. So it wasn't, it was just kind of pulling you in compliance with a standard, like the right word wasn't used. So it was a very similar word, but not identical. And to me, I think so fixing, she had under non-substantial conflicting terminology. I don't know that you had conflicting terminology. It was more like incorrect terminology or not current terminology, but and she even wrote in here non-substantial conflicting requirements. I don't know that we had conflicting requirements. The one that I emailed you about that I was all screwed up on was this and or on maximum building height and maximum stories. Do you use and, do you use or, whichever is greater? And I was having a real problem with that, but I just think poor organization, things that are just not clear because the wording is poor. But I mean, these words, changing those words don't change the outcome. Like when she talked about a definition of, and I marked this up, she said a substantial change would involve diminishing or enhancing property values or the rights of the owner or developmental opportunities. You don't want to do anything like that. That would be completely unfair and inappropriate. Like Carl said, you have to have a public hearing and you have to do your homework. But I don't think any of Randy's markups so far fell into that pile.
I didn't see any.
Okay, so,
Was there one that made you uncomfortable, Randy? Like, was there one?
no, I
that you
think
were
what
like,
makes me uncomfortable is is the reorganization of the ordinance. I mean, I know how it should be. I mean, I've read zoning ordinances for the past 40 years and I know what they should look like, and this isn't it. I mean, we gotta get material together where it belongs. And I mean, we got 37 articles here. This
Right.
is silly, and some of them have just one provision in it. You know, we gotta reorganize it. I think that's gonna give some people some confusion because it's gonna be laid out in a much more logical and
Organized way.
sequential way.
So why would people have a problem with that?
Well, because they're used to seeing it in a certain way now,
But you
and
know.
we're gonna change it.
who's Really, when I think about who's that gonna cause trouble? All the same information is there. It's just organized or grouped. I
Right.
think you're grouping it, right?
Right,
As
exactly,
opposed to itemizing. it in
exactly,
a
because you
huge
don't
list.
want to go through an ordinance and you're on Article 2 when you have to go to Article 37 to find something that's related to what you just read.
Right,
So that's what I'm trying to get away from.
but
You're right, that
Bob Hall is gonna be the person that's gonna
I'm
have.
sure Bob will welcome to getting this
Yeah.
straightened up here.
Yeah.
Asked him to please come to
he's gonna
this
love it.
meeting, but he didn't. But-
Well, I've talked with him and he agreed with the notion of reorganizing it before we started here. So what I did in the packet is you have the color coded system there of existing sections and where they go. So
Yeah.
it's grouping it together into half of the articles, so you can see where they come from. Last time I used the little arrows and that was confusing. The colors are probably better, although I ran out of colors.
I
Um,
was seeing that, yeah, I saw it. Was
So
different.
it gets a little bit wonky, but so, you know, all you really have to do is go through, starting on page 45 of your packet and look at the comments and see what the comments say as far as whether it's a new definition, a changed terminology, removal of things that don't belong in definitions, like you regulate fences in the definition. Nobody does that. That's silly.
Right,
It needs to
yeah.
move somewhere else.
Right,
So get that out of there. We're gonna have to come
right,
back to
but in that-
definitions.
like, that's a good example, though. It's not like you're getting rid of the fence regulation. You're just
No.
putting it where it
Putting
belongs.
it where
So
it
you're
belongs.
not deleting any, I mean, some people would construe it as deleting it. I would say you're moving it.
No, it's
Yeah.
organizing and organizing this should be, the minimal thing. When we change something, that's the maximum
Right.
thing. And this thing has needed organizing forever, and Bob Hall's been one of the biggest proponents of that. Since day one, he's said that.
That makes his job so much harder to be able to
Yes.
find
Right.
out what
Yeah.
Right.
so you have to imagine a zoning ordinance is not just a novel that you read before you go to bed. I mean, a zoning ordinance is a tool that you use to review developments. You have to put yourself in the position of Bob Hall, who gets handed a set of plans from somebody who wants to do something. And your job is to look at this ordinance and say, does that plan meet this?
Right, can we do that?
So this is the tool to make development happen in a way that meets certain basic standards. You know, it's harder to do that when terminology is goofy, when things are misorganized, where requirements are in definitions, when, you know, it's been cobbled together over the last 50 years. And
With no real leadership.
right,
Doing that. And so in my opinion, the minor stuff is organizing and changing a few terms to make everything consistent. Okay, when we
Yep.
actually change something, what the meaning of it is, that's a big.
Yes,
that's
then we'll
the
just
other.
discuss it as a group.
And then I
come to
think
a
that's
decision.
more where this comes in.
Yeah,
play.
and we'll
Yep.
discuss it as a
Later.
group and
So,
make a decision. Yeah.
I think for what we have here is what we're saying. I mean, I've gone through them all. I think we've all read them.
Mhm.
Everything I've seen that he's done, I think needs to be corrected.
Yep.
And I agree with what he has planned there. I agree with the fact that it needs to be reorganized. Do we need as board here, do we need to just come to consensus that we agree with what he's done so far? Or
And
do we need to
accept
have a
it?
vote?
Well, I think we're trying to define the difference between the maximum and the minimum.
Oh,
So,
well, I would suggest we separate that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would-
this here, we could
this
adopt,
here-
we could adopt this, what Randy has done, and then go back to trying to figure out again the large and the small change. But could we, but for what we have done, and we've all read, and I think we agreed, could we accept what
Okay.
was done from
I think
page, I think
just-
it's 45 to 84?
Just because we brought this up first, I think you were trying to get us back on track with that.
Right.
I think we should just separate that.
Okay,
I think this is a discussion that we need to make when we make changes
okay,
to the ordinance.
Okay.
I think what we're doing here is we're not doing any major changes. We're doing corrections.
mhm,
And corrections, reorganization, and clarification.
We're clarifying.
Clarifying and, right,
You can't make changes. to the
Yeah.
ordinance
Okay, well,
Right,
without-
so just to be clear though, at the end of this, it has to go through the amendment process.
right. It all
Right,
goes through that
right.
thing, yeah.
With the public hearing and all
So-
that.
mhm.
Right.
Right.
To the agenda, I think that we should look at this later. As far as
Yes,
this fact finding and that as a major change that we'll use after we.
okay.
so you're thinking it's not required at this point, is that
Right.
what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, could we,
so,
we don't need a motion, could
I
we
don't
just
think we
have
need
a
to.
consensus to accept pages 45 through 84?
do we even
With-
need to do?
I don't think that's what we're
No.
trying to, I don't think that's the agenda item we're on right now.
Just as a clarification, we're gonna need to go back to the definitions as we
Mhm.
find we're
Right.
missing ones or ones that need to be corrected. So we're gonna be going back to this. I'm gonna build on to the next group of
Okay.
material, for the
45
next
through
meeting,
63, I think
but-
is what-
but don't be surprised to see more edits to these initial chapters.
So I did find one highlight, so I misspoke earlier. I found one highlight that I highlighted. I don't disagree with the change. However, on page 47, you will see that somebody might construe that you made a substantial change to the definition of a bed and breakfast. Because the prior terminology was
Oh.
just one little sentence. It's previously said a private residential dwelling in which the owner provides overnight accommodations and breakfast to a transient guest for compensation.
I have.
And then what Randy put in there, and I assume you got this out of some standard publication.
It's out of state law.
Okay, out of state law,
Yeah.
which is a good place
That's
to
the
go.
place to get it,
So this
yeah.
is a
And
correction.
you can see, I would call this a more on the higher end of closer to a substantial correction than an unsubstantial one, but. You know, I mean, if I would say there was one in here, this would be the one, just because there's a lot of words changed. And it actually says 10 or few sleeping rooms, which is a really big number.
I have a question on that, on the bed and breakfast, it says it has to have a smoke detector. Shouldn't they also have to have a carbon monoxide detector?
I don't think
Well-
that's the code in Grand Traverse County, because my carbon monoxide are in the hallways per the
But
code.
to go back to that, then this change, if you want to call it a change, is because of state law.
State law uses that definition for bed and breakfast. So,
So we're
so
clarifying.
if the state law has that definition,
Why wouldn't we?
why wouldn't we?
Right. And
Rather than making up
could
So
a,
I
you
would-
add that note there? It'd be really.
Yes, that would
helpful.
be.
If you
It's-
could add
it's
that
underneath
to
the,
conform with, did I miss it somewhere?
it's the next bullet or bubble underneath.
Oh, I wasn't putting that all together in my brain.
Better
Okay,
to use the MCL definition.
okay.
and there's
If
the
that's the
section.
way you like to do your process.
Well,
that's fine.
Oh, got it.
Right. Okay, I see it now.
Yep.
That's just the way the word lets me do
Okay.
that stuff.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine. Okay. So Randy, let's go back to this. Do you need us to draw a hard picture frame around
No,
non-substantial?
no, I think I think
Right.
I get the drift here. I mean, I don't want to make large changes. I mean,
Right,
first of all, it's easier for me to just blow through this thing and fix the obvious stupid stuff and
Right.
move on. It's
right.
so,
And I think as long as we're all committed to reading all this, I did it.
Mhm.
I survived. Tough, but I survived.
I guess
That's what
we
I
can
have
give
to do.
them direction of saying that we agree with what
Yeah,
you're doing
I think-
and carry on.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we're all in, we have a consensus that we agree with these changes from, was it 43 to 60? Yeah, page 45 to 63. We're all in agreement or acceptance.
So
Of
are we gonna not make a definition?
No, it's gonna do that. We kind of got off a little bit on the changes. Yeah,
Well,
we can go
but I-
back to. Go ahead.
how I understand it is she's asking us
Mhm.
to make a definition.
Mhm.
What is the definition of a substantial change and a not a substantial change? So are we, it's kind of something like we're deciding not to do that. We're happy with what Randy's doing, but that isn't what we were asked to do.
Well,
Well,
I think what
we don't
she's
have it.
there on the right track, but I think she's missing a couple things, and that's correction, that's re-clarifying. So there needs to be more than just whether it's a substantial change or not. It needs to be clarified as, okay, this is, we're not changing this, we're not changing the language because of a change. We're changing it to clarify it.
Right.
We're not changing it, to
Right.
change the ordinance
Change the rules, yeah.
or change the rules or get something in there that we want. We're changing it because either state law or it's kind of conflict with itself or something like that. So I think what we need to do is relook at that and maybe change it to 3, whether it's or 2, and add one of them as, is this a change because of conflict,
yeah.
state law, whatever that may be, and then have the category of major change because of, we want to change it because it's stupid, or it's,
Yep.
whatever, because we don't like it, or whatever it may be, or the public wants to change because of this. I think that is going to be going down a little bit of a rabbit hole that we need a little bit,
Need a little more information.
we need a little bit more information.
Well,
And we
but
need some
we committed
definition,
to no
too.
substantial changes, so we're
Right.
not supposed to be doing those.
Right.
Well, we don't know what they are.
And I don't know,
Right,
I don't
that's,
know if you
that's
found
what I
a
keep
hard
trying to draw
number.
it back to.
We don't know what
That's
they
what she asked.
No, I mean, I would try to highlight it, like,
Where do we draw the line?
Like,
Right.
you didn't find something that said
Well-
20 versus 200.
Well, I
No.
think for us purpose
No.
here, I think a substantial change would be something that's not a correction. Change. if there's a state
clarification
law
or reorganization.
Organization or clarification.
Yeah.
Maybe we could
So
do this.
there you go.
that.
There's the definition.
That's what I have. That's what I think. That's what we're looking for. We're working on clarifying and correcting words and definitions right now, not changing anything that changes outcome.
That's perfect.
Like,
Well,
have you found a big typo yet? Missing
No,
a
I haven't found a
zero?
big typo, but as I read through the definitions, I know the sign ordinance stuff, the sign definitions are all wrong.
You know they don't comply with what,
With-
state regulations?
With Supreme Court decisions of the last 10 years.
Okay, and you did mention that.
So but
Right,
that's a
she
big
put it-
change to get
Right.
into
That's
that.
big change.
Right.
So I'm highlighting it, but I'm not touching it.
Right, I don't think you should.
No, I mean, we'd be stuck for a year.
I pushed on page 45, you deleted the township name permit. The proportioning. Of the lot into not more than 4 parts. Why did you take that out? Is that not changing something? It's deleted.
I deleted the last sentence in the land division. The land division ordinance should control. So it's the same as Article 2.12, except change the title to read splitting lots within recorded subdivision rather than splitting lots within recorded subdivisions.
Yeah, that. Not my intention, but is it changing something? I believe-
So I deleted the last sentence as the land division ordinance. So is this a move? Is this a comment where you moved it?
The land division ordinance should control.
Land division, yeah.
Because it's talking about how you split property in the zoning ordinance, and you have a land division ordinance that does that. Maybe that
Right.
was written before the land division ordinance was. Or I mean, that was put in before, I don't know, but you're creating conflict between,
Mentioned in that.
you've got a,
So
you've
it's a
got a
duplicate.
conflict between the zoning ordinance and the land. Right,
Here's what I was just thinking in my head. That a definition of you have substantial change, but this would be not substantial change. Would be clarification, something that was clarification, fixed
Organization,
conflict,
conflicts.
state law,
Yeah.
duplication. And organization, but does not change the spirit of the ordinance.
I think that sounds pretty good.
State or federal law, yeah.
How about we add to that poor wording and obvious errors /
I think
mistakes,
that'd be clarification.
like
wouldn't it?
typos? Maybe,
That kind of all falls into.
but I do think adding something like poor wording, address poor wording causing difficult understanding or something like this.
I think clarification would cover that.
Yeah,
think
that'd be
so, too.
clarifying it.
So clarification, conflict, does not, conflict, either state law, or federal law. Is a duplicate. Organization. And does not change the spirit of the ordinance.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Now, state law, does that mean you would make the sign change?
Well, that's actually Supreme Court decision, is the sign stuff.
Oh, okay.
But that,
it's not-
that's a whole separate
Yeah, that's.
effort.
That's
I mean, talk about rabbit holes, that's
It's
gonna,
a mess. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Basically the.
Should we put at the bottom of that and not go down any rabbit holes?
Yeah. No rabbit holes.
No bunnies.
No bunnies here. Well, I guess
Did
that's
we,
what I would suggest,
and-
that would be our,
And then,
not,
for the substantial changes, anything beyond that.
anything beyond.
that's a good way of putting it.
Does that make sense to you, Randy? You
Sure
agree with
does.
that?
Good.
We all in agreement with that? Good.
Yes.
We don't need a vote, do we?
Let's roll.
Okay,
I can read what I have on the stand up consensus
okay.
was to accept what had been presented by Randy for the meeting.
Mhm.
What's been completed so far?
Let's make it-
And those are pages, I think it was 45
Well, I think it's sections.
through, well, it's got a page number here too, it's 45 through
In the back.
63 in the back, I think it is.
Well, Articles 1 through 4 or something.
It's
isn't it?
article
Yeah.
1 through 4.
Article-
It's
I
an
think that
easier
covers-
way to say it.
Yeah, Articles 1 through 4. right?
Okay,
One last point on this, in your packet, there was also a list of the amendments. All 84 of them that have been adopted since the original.
Yeah.
So I went through them all. There's gaps, there were gaps. The stuff that was in my binder included some general ordinances as opposed to zoning ordinance amendments. I don't know how that got in there, but so what I did was we have a list of all the amendments. Not only the code, not only the sections that were affected, but also a written description of what that amendment covered. Just in a general sentence, so we can follow that, because it's been confusing to me as to these zoning amendments, which all have to be folded into the new document. So just so you're aware that that's actually in an Excel spreadsheet now too, so we can sort it.
It
Which,
really tells you what a rat hole this was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bad. Really bad.
Yeah.
I think that's a priceless.
A lot
time
of
to
sin
change.
all the way back to.
There's a whole
Yeah.
lot of correction going.
Wow.
So if you look at any amendments, I know everyone was given a binder with the zoning ordinance and the list of
Yes.
amendments. So that probably can be used to supplement what was in the binder, although some of the stuff in my binder where it said an amendment was actually a general ordinance that was adopted, not a zoning amendment. So I had to go back to some of the files that I had from the clerk's office and from Kim Mangus and others to piece it together.
When we're done with this, that binder's gonna change, right?
Yeah,
Throw it in the garbage.
we should have a little burning party.
Yeah.
right.
6
Yeah.
months from now, hopefully.
oh, did you have a question? Okay, okay. Okay. The next thing was review the preserve proposed zoning restriction determines what should be updated now and what should wait on the master plan.
I think we pretty
Yeah, and I
much
think
did
we
that.
did, I think we did that.
Yeah.
So, okay, joint township board and PC meeting.
I
The
don't-
new meeting date determined,
It has not been determined.
has not been determined.
Did, she get us a list of their possible dates?
I don't
Don't think
So
so
there's
yet.
nothing we can do.
No, I think,
No.
I think the planning commission is supposed to propose some dates. Is
I
that what I heard?
she did, and I think Ron had, she proposed a couple of dates.
And the board couldn't have a
Couldn't
quorum
make it.
for any of those, so
Yeah.
she asked the board to give us some dates that would
Yeah.
work, to see if we could match any of
We,
those.
we give the board some dates, right? Or
We
no?
gave them, yeah.
We already did that.
Yeah.
And they said that they wouldn't have a quorum for any of those dates.
Yeah,
So she asked Ron to get with the board and send some dates back to us.
Her last note said PC, please choose 2 dates in early December for a joint
Oh,
planning commission township board.
oh,
meeting.
see, that's new to me. I didn't heard that.
Right.
because the last one was choose something from, I think, to December, I think it was,
Before December 7th.
Yeah.
I think she
I
said.
think is what it was.
So I don't know exactly the date, but it was early in December.
Well,
Before the meeting in December, I think.
yeah, if we choose some dates and they can't make it, or if it's in conflict. I think we'll probably pick a couple of dates and they may not work.
Yeah,
I mean,
You
none
know.
of, none of those dates in the first week of, December, I'm gonna be able to be here for.
And if we pick a couple right now, the board looks like they're busy through the 7th, I think is what, so
And our meeting is the 6th.
our meeting's the 6th, so I think
Something.
we could pick a couple of dates, but. We're
Starts
probably not gonna
getting
work.
really hairy.
Yeah,
Deer season's around the corner, and Thanksgiving's right after that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be tough to get all these people to be able to pick
Yeah.
something in that
Christmas,
zone.
we got people that may be going away, so.
Right,
So we're looking at something like December 11th that week.
yeah, that's a lot better.
Yeah.
What days work?
I could do the 14th.
I'm available the 14th.
I'm good.
This is a Thursday. I'm sorry, I should have said it's Thursday.
12th is, their board meeting.
Anything else that week work?
I could work anytime that week.
Yeah.
So 14th is maybe one.
I could do the 13th.
I can do that.
What
Any of
time?
those dates work for me.
Yeah, in the evening, right?
Yep.
13th or 14th?
Yep.
Does that look good? Okay. Okay, then for the agenda for that, do we have the master plan? Zoning projects, including how the PC plans to address the issues of substantial, non-substantial changes, so,
Well, I think we summarized that.
Yeah.
in a
yeah,
little
so that's
short form.
done.
Yep.
Okay, Elk Rapids, new business is done. Okay, our next meeting is at our next meetings, master plan workshop at Mill Creek on the 7th from 7 to 9.
Is
We did
there a-
not, figure out who's gonna volunteer for that and help for that,
For what?
for the 7th. Who's gonna help work? the
I
tables?
believe I can. I think I'm okay from the 7th.
I
Did
was
you guys take a
planning
look?
on attending.
I'll be there.
I'm gonna be there.
What
I'll be
time,
there.
what
Okay.
time do we need to be there?
A
Oh,
little before quarter,
yeah,
quarter two or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
is that all?
yeah.
Yeah, and I guess you can just assign us tables when we get there.
Okay,
We'll have to play some of that by ear in terms of how many people we have, how the
Right.
tables are set up and all
Okay.
that, so
okay,
we'll probably be there by 6:30 or
I
so.
think it would be good by
Okay.
6:30.
Okay. We have our volunteers. Let's see, public comment.
At another community, when they were doing updates on their ordinances, they had the zoning administrator read through them as well to see if it made sense to him and what would present issues for him to decide on site reviews or whatever that's in the ordinance. And maybe later on, when it gets further down the line, that Bob Paul can do that with ours, because that helps out a lot. But you're right, having the joint meeting, because the same questions you're having between minor and major, does it change the meaning of the ordinance? The board's gonna have those same questions and probably a lot more than you did, so. You want to get it I'm excited. There's this much progress, but I know that, you know, the hurdles are coming. But I just appreciate all the work that you're doing.
We appreciate you too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you very much for your help.
Yeah.
No, we sure need them. Let me see.
There's no raised hands on the Zoom.
Okay. Anybody on Zoom?
One,
One.
no raised hands.
Okay. Okay. Okay, discussion and comments for keynotes to share with the board.
I think the problem is the word change. We're not changing the ordinance, we're clarifying.
Yeah.
Not just one thing, the entire package you've gone through. And say, definition. I think
Yep.
anytime we use the state definition. That's probably, in most cases, probably a good idea. But the word change right there is a red flag.
I agree.
You know, Carl, could we drop that term change and go to a term clarification or clarify?
I think so.
I
I
think we
think
talked
we
about
said-
that last month, but.
I think let's do that because I honestly think that we're clarifying.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we need to do. And I think with, like Carl said, that the fear goes up when you say change, but we're clarifying.
There's redundancies, there's,
Mhm.
consistent with the state definitions. What I looked in there was the log cabin, temporary residence. I can't have a problem with that, except for if that's what the state definition is, fine, because when does a cabin? People end up living in it full time. I have one, but I said, okay. Clarification. It's the whole package.
Yep.
I think you did a really good job, but this is really good.
Good job, Randy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Thank-
good job.
Thanks, Jeff.
We're
Yeah.
getting the ball down the field.
Action items for the PC members reviewed.
Oh, wait, I think we missed keynotes to share with the township board. Well, you can
Yeah,
share
thank you.
with them the dates that you chose for the meeting.
But that's right. I mean, we don't even have a meeting yet, so.
Yeah, we don't have one,
Jumping
no.
the gun there.
And that's gonna be after our next meeting again anyways, right?
Right.
We tried for November, it didn't work.
Right.
I mean, we might have a whole new set of issues by that time.
And you know, we may not have a joint meeting in December.
Yeah. maybe not.
We don't know that.
We don't
You
know.
know, that depends. Now that they have a date to work on, we'll see if there's a conflict. Continuing education here has none.
I'd just like to point out one
Go-
other thing.
go
I
ahead.
wanna take Rachel's stuff that she has here
Mhm.
and then just kind of add in another slot for this kind of stuff and throw it by her. And then throw it by you guys and try to come up, because I think she's looking for something concrete. And I'll try to come up with something
Yeah.
like that. We'll throw it around. And then for our next meeting, it can be brought back.
Revisit
up.
it again.
And I think what you had there just nails it. It clarifies that this is what we're doing and we'll change the terminology to clarifying. Or was it clarifying? We should change it? Yeah, rather than change,
Well, there is still gonna be change.
clarifying.
No, there's still gonna be change, but that's down the road, right?
Yes.
All we're talking about now
Yeah.
is just these things right here.
So anybody uses the word change has to put $5 in the.
Yes. And no more candy for you.
I like that idea.
Let me see, are we ready to adjourn? Is there anything else? Did you have anything, Mike?
I don't
know, I
didn't.
Carl? Okay, but we adjourn at, is that 10:50 or 9:58?
9:50.
49.
9, can't see.
You did good, Al.
Well, it's